To make sure I wouldn't skimp on myself after starting school, my mom loaded up my meal card with 100,000 in one go, but when the student from a poor background saw the fruit and snacks I'd brought for our roommates, she suddenly got upset. "You're so wasteful and extravagant, anyone can see you don't know how to live within your means. My mom can't stand people like you." I found it baffling, so I just showed her my meal card statement. "This fruit and these snacks aren't even expensive. Besides, it's my money, I can spend it however I want." I never expected the student on financial aid to blow up like that. Pointing at my dinner receipt for 73 yuan, she yelled, "How can a student eat such an expensive meal? Aren't you afraid it'll shorten your life? Every extra cent you spend now means my brother will have to work an extra job to afford marrying you later, a high-maintenance person like you. My family could never afford to keep you." Her words gave me goosebumps all over. I immediately went to find my academic advisor to request a room change. Little did I know, she held a bitter grudge against me. Not long after, she and her whole family abducted me by force, dragging me back to their remote mountain village to be her brother's bride. In the relentless, day-and-night domestic violence inflicted by her brother, I was beaten to death in the pigsty. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the very day Zina accused me of squandering money like water. I stood frozen in place, still holding the fruit and snacks. The foul-smelling pigpen before me vanished, and my legs were unbroken. Caden hadn't beaten me. Seeing the dorm room still filled with laughter and chatter, my eyes welled up with tears in an instant. I had actually been reborn. I had been reborn on the very day I was supposed to bring fruit and snacks as a welcome gift for my new roommates. Remembering the nightmare I had endured in my past life, a lump formed in my throat. The next second, before Zina could return, I quickly hid the fruit and snacks in my suitcase. I swore I would never have anything to do with that crazy woman ever again. Just as I was about to get up and go find the dorm advisor to request a room change, I was caught red-handed by Zina, who was walking straight towards me. She looked at me with a gloomy expression, frowning impatiently. "What did you buy this time?" I nervously twisted the hem of my shirt and quickly averted my gaze. "And nothing. I didn't buy anything." To my surprise, she suddenly snatched my phone and used my own finger to unlock it. She gasped at my transaction history, exclaiming, "This is so expensive. What kind of cake costs over $100? You spend over $20 on a single glass of juice from a mix." She shot me a disbelieving look. "No offense, but is it really that easy to make money off you pampered little wives? Do you really think my brother's future earnings will just fall from the sky?" Those words also reminded me of my own experiences in my past life. In my past life, I was abducted by their family to a remote mountain village, and I never spent a single cent of their money. Instead, I was forced by her so-called hard-working brother to sell my body to support the family. I told him I had money, a lot of it. If they would just let me go, I would ensure they lived a life free from want. But after they got the ransom from my mother, they locked me in a pigsty, knee-deep in filth. Zina's mother couldn't help but sneer. "Money runs out eventually, but as long as we have you, our golden goose, we'll never want for anything. We're not foolish enough to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs." They used the ransom money to renovate their old house and started living a life of luxury that was the envy of the whole town. But all I did was say I was hungry, and Caden beat the living daylights out of me. "Hungry, hungry, hungry. Is that all you ever think about? Didn't you just have an egg yesterday morning, you good-for-nothing layabout?" That very night, he grabbed the hoe he worked with and beat me to death on that cold, rainy evening. At that thought, I could no longer contain the fury in my heart and snatched my phone back. I shot Zina a vicious glare. "It's my money, and I'll spend it however I please. Who are you to tell me what to do?" With that, she turned and walked straight to the counselor's office without a backward glance. If I can't avoid it, then so be it. I'm going to find out just who deserves to burn in the deepest pits of hell this time around, too, just like in my past life. The counselor didn't give me much trouble over my request to change dorm rooms. My request was quickly approved, and I was moved to the dorm room next door. However, just as I returned to my room to start packing my things, Zina broke down in tears in front of our other roommates. Soon after, the other roommates also cast complicated looks in my direction. "Talia, I know, as an outsider, there are some things I probably shouldn't get involved in. But that doesn't mean you should lower yourself to being a gold digger, does it? Zina told me you're already engaged to her brother, and the money on your meal card, he's the one topping it up for you, isn't he?" I was stunned into silence by my roommate's baseless accusations. I never imagined Zina could be so brazen. How could she even make up a lie like that? Before I could even defend myself, I saw Zina wipe away her tears and say, "Don't let me come between you and ruin your friendship. I just feel so bad for my brother. He works so incredibly hard, all for the sake of building a stable home for the future." This made the previously sympathetic girls shoot me icy glares in an instant. Having a gold digger like her as a roommate is such bad luck. I couldn't help but think to myself how right I was to want to switch dorm rooms. Otherwise, I really don't know how I'm supposed to share a dorm for 4 years with a roommate who believes every rumor she hears. I pulled the suitcase from under the bed, not wanting to stay a moment longer, yet, when Zena asked, "Where are you going, sis-in-law?" I still turned around and snapped, "I'm not engaged to her brother. I don't even know who her brother is. And another thing, I spent my own money, the New Year's cash gifts I've been saving up for years." Her words instantly silenced the group, and they all turned to stare at Zena in disbelief. Their intense gaze made Zena visibly uncomfortable. With eyes welling up, she turned away to tidy her bed. The atmosphere in the new dorm room was pleasant. After hearing that I was the new roommate the advisor had moved in, they all introduced themselves and warmly invited me to join them for a meal. That's when I noticed the large table in the dorm was already covered with takeout, so I took the initiative to pull out the fruit and snacks I'd hidden in my suitcase to share. Just as we were digging into our takeout and the conversation was really getting going, a voice suddenly piped up out of nowhere. "Sis, aren't you worried about gaining weight, eating that much? My brother really doesn't like girls who are too heavy." It startled me so much I nearly jumped out of my seat. I turned around and there was Zena, who had appeared as suddenly as a ghost. This time. I was so exasperated I actually laughed in her face, and fired back without holding back. "None of your damn business." The other roommates also started asking about who Zena was. But Zena completely ignored them. She walked over, glanced at the takeout on the table, then pointed a finger at me. "Sis, I came to apologize, but I only had your best interests at heart. After all, the hog we raise at home is already a big enough eater." Hearing her call me sis twice in a row piqued my roommate's curiosity. Before they could even speak, I quickly clarified, "Zena, I know your brother is getting older and having trouble finding a partner. But you can't just point at anyone and call her your future sister-in-law, can you? Besides, I go to the gym in my free time to manage my figure. That's really none of your concern." Zena looked up in disbelief. "What? Spend money on food and drinks, then spend more money to lose the weight? That's no way to spend your money. If you're that desperate, come work on my family's farm. That'll slim you down." But these remarks were met with a sharp retort from the dorm head. "It's their own money. How they spend it is none of your business." The other roommates chimed in one after another. "Exactly. If you're so fond of meddling, why don't you go to Leshan, tell the Grand Buddha to move over, and take his place? Talia already said she has nothing to do with your brother and told you to stop calling her your sister-in-law. How do you still have the nerve to stick around? You're not welcome in our dorm room. You are in the wrong place. The trash can is in the bathroom." She probably never expected that her good intentions would be met with this kind of reaction. Zena's eyes were filled with disbelief. Before everyone could stand up and usher her out, she shot me a glare and said, "Sis, I never thought you were this kind of person. It's bad enough that you're shamelessly spending my brother's money, but you're also stringing him along like some sugar daddy. In that case, I have nothing left to hold back. I have proof that she is my sister-in-law." With that, she produced, right in front of everyone, a photograph. Though the photo was creased from being hidden away and bore the marks of time, yet the woman standing beside his brother had a face identical to mine. I looked at their beaming smiles in the picture and the unfamiliar surroundings behind them. I was utterly baffled. I'm absolutely certain today was the first time I've ever met Zena, even if the photo was digitally aged. She'd still have to know who I am. The whole scene was so bizarre, I almost wondered if my father had a secret love child somewhere. I was stunned, unable to collect my thoughts for a long while. Then, Zena's icy voice sounded in my ear. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Seeing her utterly confident expression, I was instantly left speechless, a lump in my throat. Yet, even so, our dorm head, Claire, didn't just take her word for it. Instead, she turned to another roommate, Nina. "You study graphic design. Hey, take a look at this photo. Can you tell if it's been photoshopped?" The senior student, who went by Nina, immediately picked up the photo. She stared at it for the longest time but couldn't make heads or tails of it. Finally, she scratched her head with a sheepish grin. I skipped class way too much. I can't really tell." "No worries. I know an upperclassman who's a professional at this sort of thing. I'll snap a picture and send it over to ask him." However, a reply came back almost immediately that left everyone utterly stunned. "The photo is authentic. There are no signs of digital manipulation." At the same time, a smug smile spread across Zena's face. "Well, still saying you're not my sister-in-law. Then how do you explain this photo?" "I really don't know how to explain it, because the person in this photo simply can't be me. In my past life, I had never seen the woman in the photograph either." Seeing that I remained motionless, Zena glanced around at my roommates and said scornfully, "Now you see what your new roommate is really like." The only response she got was Claire's icy retort, "Please leave. You're not welcome in our dorm." Zena's face fell at the words, and she immediately turned and stormed off. "How ungrateful. You've made an enemy of someone like me. You'll regret this." For the next few days, my roommates all fell into a silent, mutual agreement not to mention the incident. They still invited me to meals and gossip sessions as usual. Zena never came looking for me again. I thought the whole drama was finally over, and I was ready to embrace a fresh start to campus life. It was one afternoon when all my roommates had been asked out by their boyfriends, and I was heading to the cafeteria alone, but on the path I always took, I ran into an old woman who was peering around furtively. Once I clearly saw the woman's face, I immediately turned around, ready to make a run for it. Yet, Zena's mother had already locked eyes on me. She caught up and grabbed my wrist. She gave me a once-over, her gaze finally settling on my backside. She pursed her lips and shook her head. Ha, so scrawny. I wonder if I'll ever get to hold a grandchild. I shot her a cold glare. Let go. I don't know you. The old woman suddenly pinched my backside hard. You ill-mannered brat. Is that any way to speak to your mother-in-law? You may not know me? But I know you. Your name is Talia, isn't it? Just hearing the name, I can tell she's a handful. I think it would be better to just rename her Isla from now on. I could hardly believe my ears. Earlier, I had thought they'd mistaken me for the woman in the photograph, but the fact that she could say my name so precisely meant there was no mistake. What on earth is going on? My mind went completely blank. Overwhelmed by a jumble of thoughts, I immediately jerked my hand away, wishing I had 8 legs to get the hell out of that place. To my surprise, the old lady cut straight to the chase. Zena told me you're a spendthrift in a money pit, but what can I do? My son has his heart set on you. Well, I'll be blunt with you then. If you want to marry my son, the dowry must include a car, at the very least. My son has loved cars since he was a boy. It can't be anything under 500,000. I've seen the house too. It's in our county town, a nice little villa. There are at least 6 rooms, so Zena won't have to share a bed with her brother anymore. I heard there's even a discount. You can get it for a lump sum of 7 million. As she chattered incessantly in my ear, I was immediately reminded of the terrifying experiences from my past life. I quickly shouted for help towards the school security guard, but the security guard was blocked by Zena. Then, she immediately pulled out her phone and played a video. In the video, under the old locust tree at the entrance to their village, I was kneeling on one knee before Caden, wearing a pure white wedding dress. I was pleading with him, with a pitiful look on my face, begging Caden to marry me. In the end, after my relentless crying and pleading, Caden agreed to marry me. And that ecstatic woman looked and sounded exactly like me. Even when she was whispering those cringy sweet nothings to Caden, she used my name. Just like in my past life when they abducted me, she dispelled the security guard's concerns with just a few words. He walked towards the old lady with a smile. So, Mom, what do you think? Does it meet with your approval? The old lady shook her head and sucked her teeth. It's just a so-so. Caden, having heard the news, had rushed over and pulled up in his van again. Seeing myself about to plunge back into the hell of my past life, I quickly pulled out my phone and called the police, but Caden, who had rushed over, snatched the phone from me and smashed it to the ground, crushing it under his foot right before my eyes. I watched as Zena laughed uncontrollably, shooting me a triumphant glance. So, what now? Thought your money made you better than everyone else? Why don't you get on your knees and beg me right now? Maybe if you're lucky, I'll take pity and throw you a scrap. Despair wrapped itself around me, deep and suffocating. It was as if a persistent fog had settled before my eyes. But just as they were forcibly dragging me toward the van parked at the entrance, a sudden flash of insight dawned on me. I think I finally understood what was really going on. The next instant, I hurriedly called out to the mother and child in front of me. The mother and son froze instantly, then gritted their teeth and slapped Zena across the face. Zena, is that any way to speak to a classmate? Is this what your father and I taught you? 6. Zena was stunned by Caden's slap. A trickle of blood then seeped from the corner of her mouth, but Caden wasn't satisfied. He grabbed her hair and struck her face again. Instantly, her nose burst, spraying blood everywhere, seeing her being beaten until she wailed and sobbed. The old woman turned her gaze toward me. Do you really have a way to make Zena marry your brother? With the situation being so critical, I had no choice but to use my brother, who's overseas, as a shield. I just hope that when he finds out, he'll have a little pity on his own sister and not accidentally get me killed. Thinking this, I nodded. As you know, my family is wealthy, but as a woman, I can't inherit the family business. But my brother is different. Not only is he more capable than I am, but he's also built his own company from the ground up and is now the CEO of a publicly traded group. He's definitely going to be the one in charge of the family in the future. The old lady's eyes lit up, and she immediately shot a glare at Caden. Teach her a lesson, make it hurt. She nearly cost our family our one shot at the big time. And she still dares to call herself the heroine holding the script. I say she's nothing but a jinx. The phrase strong female lead made my expression freeze. Just a moment ago, I had considered that Zena might have superpowers, or even wondered if she was some kind of alien, but I never imagined reality would be even more outrageous than my wildest thoughts. She's actually a transmigrator with a system backing her up. No wonder she could so effortlessly produce evidence to deceive everyone. Let's see how she can keep up her perfect, aloof act after being born into a family that bleeds you dry. When I looked back, Zena was already beaten to within an inch of her life by Caden. The old lady pressed on, asking the same question again. Hearing that, I nodded firmly without hesitation. Absolutely, my parents have always spoiled me the most. Who he wants to bring home is entirely up to me. It's just, I glanced at Zena with some hesitation. As you know, wealthy families tend to value capability over looks. Zena is just too beautiful. I'm afraid outsiders might see her as just a pretty face. If rumors start to spread, it could potentially affect our family's market standing. This statement made Zena, who had just woken up, exclaim in shock. Bullshit, Mom, brother, don't listen to her. She's just talking nonsense. I'm the one who knows how the story unfolds. Just listen to me, tie her up, and we'll have more money than we could ever spend. If I hadn't accidentally been killed by her in my past life. How could I have ended up like this? It was only then that I realized Zena had been reborn, just like me. Yet, faced with her impotent rage, I covered my mouth with a look of concern. Zena, kidnapping is a crime. Are you trying to help them, or are you actually harming them? This made Caden frown deeply again as he strode towards Zena. How dare you spout such nonsense at a time like this? Actually, I think Talia is right. Instead of wasting your energy on your appearance, you should think about how to make yourself worthy of being a society wife. As he spoke, he grabbed a handful of mud and smeared it on Zena's face. You're not allowed to use any makeup from now on. Do you think my money grows on trees? Covered in foul-smelling mud, Zena completely lost it. After all, despite her humble origins, she cared about her appearance more than anyone, and in my past life, every penny I earned by selling my body was spent on makeup. Seeing her completely break down and lose it, I finally felt a wave of relief wash over me. Thankfully, my gamble paid off this time. All those past experiences made me realize she never really liked me. In fact, she was utterly disgusted by me. The reason they abducted me by force was to extract value from me. No, I have returned every bit of it to Zena in full. It's time for me to personally send this whole family straight to hell. 7. That very day. Even though I had managed to avert the immediate crisis, Zena's family still insisted on taking me with them. Just to be safe, we arrived at the familiar, secluded valley. They didn't treat me harshly like they used to. Instead, they treated me like a cash cow, showering me with attention. Heh, you can stay with us for the time being, until Zena and your brother get engaged. We may be poor, but you'll never go wanting in this house. My eyes fell on the braised chicken on the table, a dish we could only afford during the new year. Without a second thought, I grabbed a drumstick and tore into it. Zena immediately shot me a venomous glare. Her fingers clenched so tight her knuckles cracked. After catching my eye, she immediately started whining to the old lady in a sneaky, underhanded way. Mom, I'm hungry. Little did she know. Caden would slap her hand away from the old lady's shoulder. Have you practiced the posture I taught you? How many times do I have to tell you? A lady from a wealthy family carries herself with grace in every single gesture. Look at yourself. You can't stand or sit properly, and you still have the nerve to say you're hungry. Get back to practicing. Now, over the next few days, Zena was forced by Caden to learn a great many things. Even the number of times one should chew a mouthful of food before swallowing is a matter of considerable deliberation. I couldn't help but sigh, thinking what's the point of living if it has to be like this. And so, on the night she was brutally beaten by Caden once again, Zena hanged herself. Thankfully, I found her just in time, and the old woman managed to pull her back with great effort. When she opened her eyes again, Zena was overjoyed and laughed, shouting, "Thank goodness. I've been reborn once more." But when she met Caden's venomous gaze, the light instantly vanished from her eyes. His eyes were filled with a desperate plea as he looked at me. Yet, Caden dragged him into the pigsty like a dead dog. "Still running your mouth, are you? You're a hopeless case," accompanied by a pitiful wail. Caden snapped the stick in his hands once more. 8. It wasn't until a week later, Zena, reshaped by Caden's brutal methods, stood before me once more. I observed her poised demeanor and the picture-perfect smile fixed upon her face. I nodded in satisfaction. "Well done, this way. It's perfectly suited to a lady of your standing." Upon hearing this, the mother and son were moved to tears of joy. "Wonderful. It makes all my son's hard work and careful planning these past days worthwhile." Caden grinned from ear to ear. "So, I'll finally have enough money to marry Widow Lydia from the next village." At the mention of Widow Lydia's name, I could hardly believe my ears. In a past life, upon hearing of Caden's marriage, Widow Lydia died of a broken heart. It was from that moment on that Caden started laying into me. It all started to make sense. But what I never could have anticipated was that, before I could even ask them to contact my brother, Widow Lydia suddenly showed up at my door, pointing her finger in my face and shrieking, "You despicable wretch. How dare you send someone to steal my Caden away? You sent someone." In an instant, it was as if all her strength had been completely drained from her. She slumped to the ground and began to weep uncontrollably. Caden was horrified to hear this and immediately pressed for details on what had happened. At that moment, Zena tilted her head toward me, a barely perceptible smile playing on her lips. Spurred by Caden's concern, Widow Lydia's sobs grew even more intense. Soon enough, Caden noticed the bloodstain on her trousers. His knuckles turned white as he clenched his fists. Lydia, don't cry. Tell me, Caden, what happened? You're bleeding so much. Yet, Lydia wore an expression of stoic endurance. I looked up at Caden, shaking my head helplessly. Brother Caden, maybe this is just my fate. I'm afraid I can never be with you in this lifetime. As she spoke, she turned her tear-filled eyes toward me, her voice trembling. I'm tainted. I'm no longer worthy of you, but I never wanted this to happen. Last night, a bunch of people suddenly broke into my house, without a word. She suddenly threw herself into Caden's arms, wailing helplessly, Brother Caden, I'm ruined. Those words made Caden's whole body tremble, veins bulged on his forehead as he instantly glared at me. Talia, I thought you were our family's savior, come to our aid, but now, what in God's name have you done to Lydia? 9. Blind rage consumed Caden's mind. Even when an old woman rushed to stop him, he shoved her aside without a second thought. She sat on the ground, slapping her thigh and wailing, Caden, don't be a fool. Talia is our family's golden goose. Whether we can turn our lives around depends entirely on her. Caden shot back coldly. What the hell kind of bullshit god of wealth is that? If anyone lays a finger on my Lydia, even if they were the Emperor of Heaven himself, they're dead. Watching as a faint smile played on Lydia's lips, directed at Zena, it didn't take a genius to figure out whose handiwork all this was, so I cried out in a panic, Brother-in-law, don't do anything rash, I swear, I didn't do this, even if you don't care about Zena. Are you really going to throw away the villa you were going to give to your sister Lydia? What about the 5 million dowry, now that it's happened? Shouldn't we be doing everything we can to make it up to Lydia? You have to believe me, I had nothing to do with this. Lydia stopped crying instantly, her eyes widening as she stared at Caden. What villa? What bride price? How come I don't know anything about this? Brother Caden, don't be so quick to act. Little did I know, Caden seemed to have seen right through something. He picked up the sickle used for cutting pigweed and slowly started walking towards me. You think everything can be fixed with your lousy money, Lydia? Don't bother trying to talk me out of it. I know exactly what I'm doing. I told you I'd protect you for life. If anyone dares lay a finger on you, I'll make them pay with their life. At that point, I finally reached out to Lydia in despair. Lydia, help me. Caden let out a derisive snort. Only now you realize you should be afraid. Too late. Even if you get on your knees and beg Lydia now, it won't bring back. However, before he could finish his sentence, he froze in place. Utterly stunned, he reached a hand to the back of his head and found it came away covered in blood. When he turned around, Lydia was trembling, holding a hoe aloft. Meeting Caden's complicated gaze, I immediately shrank into myself and muttered under my breath, Caden, you should have let me finish. Before he could even react, the old woman raised a rock and hurled it at him. Sobbing, she kept repeating, Caden, please don't hate your mother. I just didn't want you to make a single mistake that would haunt you forever. You've gone too far. The next second, he completely blacked out. Zena watched in stunned disbelief, her eyes filled with confusion. How could this happen? But the old woman and Lydia both shot him a glare. You shameless thing. We'll deal with you when we get back. By the time the family arrived at the hospital in their van, Caden had already missed the critical window for treatment and had slipped into a vegetative state. The corridor echoed with the sound of the elderly woman and Lydia sobbing. Seeing this, I quickly spoke up to comfort them. The doctor only said the chances of him waking up are slim, not that it's impossible for Caden to ever come around. Please, try not to worry. With how advanced medical technology is these days, Caden will be just fine. Besides, my family has more than enough money to get him the absolute best care available. To everyone's surprise, Zena let out a scornful laugh. What good is all that money? That line of yours would only work on uneducated old ladies. For God's sake, can you use your heads? I honestly don't know why a strong, independent woman like me has to be stuck with such an embarrassing family. The next second, a sharp slap landed across her face. The old woman ground her teeth and snarled. What is that supposed to mean? You ungrateful wretch! You're just hoping your brother never wakes up, aren't you? Lydia, as if gone mad, began clawing at her own hair. Zena, why didn't you tell me that Caden was planning to marry me, and that your family is about to become impossibly wealthy, and you wanted me to slander Talia, which led to Caden ending up in a vegetative state? I'll kill you. 10. That day, if I hadn't stopped those two women in time, Zena would have died right there in the hospital. It was only after my reminder that the old lady finally let me use the phone, but she still didn't forget to give me a venomous look and warn me, don't try anything funny. After hearing that, I nodded, took the phone, and sent a photo of Zena. I personally chose your fiancé for you. Immediately after, I attached a sticker I had never sent before. This was the signal we had agreed upon long ago. When I was 13, I was kidnapped. My brother saved my life at great cost to himself. When I went to visit him in the hospital, he was crying his eyes out, and that's how this meme came to be. He once told me that if I was ever in danger, I should send him this meme. In my past life, I did exactly that, but the village was so remote that by the time my brother arrived with help, I had already been chopped up by a family and fed to the pigs. This time, it's their turn to get a taste of hell. Soon after, I received my brother's reply, "She's beautiful, I'm very pleased." Hearing the words read aloud by Lydia, the old lady also snatched the phone away in a fit of joy. "From now on, you should stay and look after my son. Don't worry, you're our family's savior. We'll make sure you're well taken care of." Even Lydia said she wouldn't mind if Caden had one more person by his side. This act of betrayal looks exactly the same as when you took the ransom in your past life. You really are incorrigible. 11. Soon. The wedding between Zena and my brother was officially scheduled. Meanwhile, I was locked in the root cellar at home. On the wedding day, the old lady and Lydia attended in their finest attire as Zena's family. Seeing my brother in his sharp suit, Zena, in her pristine white wedding dress, was taken aback for a moment. The next second, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. If I'd known Talia had such a handsome older brother, why on earth did I bother with all that other nonsense? After hearing her brother was in his 30s and still single, I just assumed he'd be some greasy, washed-up old man, but looking at him now, isn't he just perfect for a leading lady like me? After a brief moment of remorse, she walked over to my brother with a smile, her demeanor poised and graceful. "Hello there, my husband-to-be whom I've never met. I am your future wife, Zena," meeting her smiling eyes. My brother also chuckled softly. "Well then, I'll be in your care from now on, Miss Zena." At this moment, his gentle face was a mask of restraint and composure. Before the assembled guests, he announced Zena's identity at the wedding of the century. Amidst the endless stream of congratulations, Zena's face flushed a deep red. She hastily motioned to the flower girl, eager to proceed with the ring exchange, but my brother gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Not so fast," he said. "There's still a surprise for you," as Zena watched in stunned disbelief. Countless helicopters swept over the venue, showering the sky with a blizzard of blossoms. Then, the million-dollar fireworks erupted into a brilliant, shimmering rainbow right before her eyes. Watching Zena, who was utterly lost in the fairy tale, my brother instinctively checked the time, his brow furrowed with palpable irritation. The flower girls made their entrance only after the entire fireworks display had concluded. It was then, with an air of serene composure, that he knelt before Zena. And at that very moment, the signal he had been waiting for finally arrived. Under Zena's tearful gaze, he looked toward his special assistant in the audience. Then, turning to Zena with deep affection, he said, "Zena, will you marry me?" The next second, Zena hurriedly opened her mouth to speak, but before a sound could escape her lips, the massive screen behind them erupted with sounds of passionate moaning. Hearing it, all the color instantly drained from Zena's face. 12. Once the bodyguards had escorted me into the car, I was looking at the news report on my phone. That day, the entire wedding descended into farce after the exposure of Zena's chaotic private life. At that moment, their family was just one step away from their rags to riches transformation. Zena was taken away by the old lady and Lydia. Soon after, the old lady's only son, the apple of her eye, also drew his last breath in the hospital. I thoughtfully called the police for Zena. But the remote mountain hollow where they were was so isolated that by the time the police arrived, she had already been dismembered by the two and fed to the pigs. However, the police still managed to find some clues at the scene. A manhunt was launched for the old woman and Lydia. When the old woman was found, she had already hanged herself from a crooked tree outside the village. Her death was a wretched sight, her eyes filled with profound resentment. It was as if she was repenting for having caused her own son's death. As for Lydia, she was quickly apprehended by the police while attempting to flee. They were prosecuted and executed by firing squad. After saying all that, my brother suddenly put down the newspaper he'd specifically bought, looked at me with a cold sneer, and said, "Now that we've settled those scores, isn't it time to settle ours?" I was terrified by his menacing aura and immediately turned to flee. But he pulled me into his arms in one swift motion. His voice trembled badly. "Don't be afraid, Talia. I'll protect you for the rest of your life." As she spoke, she pointed at the scrape on my hand and asked, "Does it hurt?" I had seen that same anxious expression 6 years ago. Feeling reassured, I shook my head and said, "It doesn't hurt. Everything has become a thing of the past." After the gloom, the sunlight instantly broke through. Story 2. My neighbor is a single mother raising 2 children, and her older daughter has autism. Her autistic daughter often gets into trouble, leaving her completely overwhelmed trying to handle everything alone. I happened to be on bed rest at home due to my pregnancy, so I occasionally helped look after her kids when I had free time. One day, after returning from a prenatal checkup, I discovered the autistic girl had died in my home. They died of heat stroke because the air conditioning wasn't turned on during the extreme heat. My neighbor insisted that she had dropped her daughter off at my place before leaving, asking me to look after her. I had no way to defend myself, ended up paying a huge sum in compensation, was blamed by my mother-in-law, abandoned by my husband, and labeled a murderer by everyone. I couldn't handle the stress and had a miscarriage. Then died at home from severe bleeding, after being reborn. My female neighbor was knocking on the door, asking to borrow some sugar. I knew that opening this door would be like stepping right into the jaws of death. The sudden rapping of knuckles against the security door, thump, 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 each strike hammered against my frayed nerves. I stood frozen in the entryway, my hand pressed to my abdomen, my heart pounding wildly. Through the peephole, I could clearly see Bella standing outside, holding her crying youngest son in her arms. With her older autistic daughter Annie trailing behind, head perpetually bowed. "Xiaosu, are you home?" Her voice came through the door, tinged with her usual weariness and a hint of ingratiation. "I'm short on sugar for baking a cake. Could I borrow some?" Blood rushed to my head in an instant, only to freeze solid the very next second. I gripped the doorknob so tightly my knuckles turned white, nearly losing all sensation. The scent of stale sweat seemed to linger in my nostrils again, mingling with the oppressive heat of a late summer afternoon, and, when Annie finally collapsed on my living room floor, her eyes had lost all focus. My heart softened as I opened the door, watching her frantically trying to soothe the child in her arms, while Annie stood silently behind her with her head bowed. I turned to fetch some sugar from the kitchen, and by the time I returned, she had already hurried off with the child in her arms. I was in a rush to get to the hospital for my prenatal checkup and didn't notice Annie, but the gears of fate had already begun turning toward the abyss from that moment. During the checkup, my husband Axel called and asked me to add a few extra tests. Though reluctant, I eventually gave in after his persistent persuasion. The hospital was packed, and after waiting in line all day, I didn't get home until dusk. The moment I pushed open the door, a wave of stifling heat and eerie silence hit me. The air conditioner remote lay under the sofa, and Annie was curled up on the carpet, her small body already cold to the touch. I was frozen in shock, and it took me a moment to let out a scream before I ran out to get help. When Bella rushed into my house clutching her wailing son, the panic on her face quickly turned to grief and anger. "I told you to take care of her. How could you just leave her alone at home?" Her cries drew neighbors from all over the building, and their sympathetic yet accusatory stares felt like needles piercing through me. No one believes my explanation. The security footage only shows Bella and her two kids standing at my door. After I opened it, Annie came in, and I later gave them a bag of candy. The surveillance has no audio, but Bella insists that I promised to look after Annie so she could take her son for a vaccination, but I never made that promise. Pregnancy brain isn't actual stupidity. I won't admit to something I didn't do, because I kept trying to defend myself. Public opinion turned completely against me. After Bella blew things up online, I was branded a murderer. My mother-in-law stormed into my house, sobbing and screaming, calling me a jinx and accusing me of meddling in things while pregnant. My husband grew increasingly silent under the weight of the massive compensation and neighborhood gossip, finally saying, "Let's just separate. I don't want to bear this debt." Frantic and furious, I started having signs of a miscarriage. I desperately called Axel to come over, but he wouldn't even answer my calls. Just as I was about to call an ambulance, the door suddenly swung open. In my dazed state, I saw Bella walk in. She kicked my phone away and watched as the blood beneath me slowly spread. That's exactly how it was in my past life. Suddenly, I felt that something was off. This wasn't as simple as I had thought. It wasn't an accident, but a calculated scheme. But who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, I would be reborn, and there was still time to change everything. "Xiaosu, are you there?" The knocking came again, carrying a hint of impatient urgency. Outside the peephole, Annie suddenly lifted her head, her hollow eyes locking directly with mine, a sinister grin spreading across her lips. I stumbled backward, my back hitting the icy wall. Taking a deep breath, I leaned against the wall and slowly straightened up, placing a hand on my still warm abdomen. A new life was growing here, my chance to start over. "Who is it?" I asked in a deliberately lazy tone, shuffling to the door but avoiding the peephole. "It's me, Annie's mom. Just need to borrow some sugar," she replied, her voice softening instantly. "Sorry about that." I leaned against the door, my voice tinged with apology. "But I'm out of sugar too." The supermarket downstairs isn't far, just a quick trip. A few seconds of silence passed outside, followed by Bella's slightly stiff laughter. "Oh, I see. All right then. Sorry to bother you." I held my breath, listening to the footsteps fading down the hallway, and only when I heard the elevator doors open and close did I slowly slide to the floor. Cold sweat soaked through the back of my shirt, and my heart was still pounding wildly, peering through the peephole at the empty corridor. The sunlight was still bright, but it no longer felt as blinding as it did in my past life. I knew this was just the beginning. Bella wouldn't let this go, but this time, I won't make the same mistakes again. A hand gently rested on the lower abdomen, feeling the faint flutter beneath the palm. "My baby, mommy will protect you. In this lifetime, we're both going to live well." Sure enough, The next afternoon, while hanging laundry on the balcony, I heard Bella's frantic calls from downstairs. Annie. Annie, where did you go? I leaned over to look and saw her running around frantically at the building entrance. My heart leaped into my throat, and I quickly pulled back to hide behind the curtains. Within minutes, the doorbell rang urgently. Shasu, are you home? Bella's voice trembled with tears. Annie's missing. I just saw her run upstairs. Could you check if she came to your place? My fingers gripping the curtain turned white from the force. This never happened in my past life. She's just found another way to push Annie onto me. I took a deep breath, picked up my phone to start recording, and walked to the door, keeping my voice as calm as possible. I've been on the balcony the whole time, and our door hasn't been open. How could anyone have come in? Should I call the property management to check the surveillance footage for you? The crying outside stopped abruptly. After a long pause, her muffled voice replied, no need. I must have been mistaken. I'll go look somewhere else. Once her footsteps faded, I leaned against the door and let out a long sigh, my back once again damp with cold sweat. Over the next few days, Bella seemed to have singled me out, always finding excuses to show up around me. One day she'd say she needed to pick up medicine from the hospital and ask if I could watch her child. The next day she'd claim her pipes were broken and request I look after Annie while she called a repair technician. Each time I made excuses to decline, either saying I had a prenatal appointment or that I wasn't feeling well and needed rest. That evening when Axel came home from work, he sighed heavily the moment he stepped through the door. I handed him his slippers and casually asked, what's wrong? Did you have a rough day at work? He changed his shoes and sat on the couch, rubbing his temples as he said, it's our neighbor Bella again. She stopped me at the gate today and went on and on about how tough things are for her. She said you seemed to be avoiding her lately and wondered if she'd done something to upset you. My heart sank, but I kept my composure. It's true that raising 2 kids alone is hard for her, but I'm pregnant right now. The doctor says I need plenty of rest, and I honestly don't have the energy to help look after her children. Axel frowned at me. I know you're going through a lot, but neighbors should help each other out. She said it would just be occasionally, just lending a hand with the kids for a little while. It's not like it would wear you out. Do you have some kind of issue with her? I was stunned. Even though Axel had grown distant toward the end in my past life, he'd never accused me like this from the get-go. I looked into his eyes, hoping to find a trace of the familiar tenderness. But all I saw was discontent and confusion. Honey, you know I haven't been well. The doctor told me to avoid stress, and Annie's situation is complicated. I really don't feel comfortable overseeing her case. He waved his hand impatiently. All right, I get it. You're overthinking things. Bella isn't like that. She even told me today that she'd bring you some homemade cake another day. My heart sank. Bella never actually made a cake. How could she have said she'd bring me one? It sounded like something Axel made up himself. Is Axel hiding something from me? I stared at him, trying to read something from his face, but he avoided my gaze and stood up saying he was going to take a shower, watching his back as he walked into the bathroom. A strong sense of unease washed over me. I never doubted Axel in my previous life, but his behavior in this one is just too strange. Is there some secret between him and Bella that I don't know about? The next morning? Before I even got out of bed, I heard voices at the door. Normally I would have ignored it, but feeling insecure, I hurried out to check. Axel was discussing something with a man in work clothes and smiled when he saw me. I'm getting a code lock installed. Your memory's been so unreliable since the pregnancy, this way you won't need to worry about forgetting your keys. We'll set a simple code, too. I was taken aback. Without any prior mention, he just changed the passcode lock. Go inside. Don't let me bump into you. Without waiting for my reply, Axel ushered me back into the bedroom. The way he acted so made my blood run cold. He didn't even ask for my opinion before making the decision. Was this passcode lock really for security, or just to make it convenient for certain people to come and go? On the 3rd day after the smart lock was installed, I noticed something strange. That day, I was at home suffering from severe morning sickness, resting on the couch. When I heard faint rustling sounds outside the door, peering through the peephole, my blood ran cold. Bella was crouched at my doorstep, guiding Annie's hand as she pressed the keypad of the lock. Annie kept her head down, mechanically tapping the keys while Bella whispered something in her ear, occasionally glancing around warily. Despite being autistic, Annie has a remarkable sensitivity to numbers, so cracking these codes was a breeze for her. The sunlight bathed them in an eerie, unsettling glow that was hard to put into words. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. So that's it. Axel changed the lock's code because he was in cahoots with Bella all along. That simple and easy to remember password he bragged about. He'd already secretly given it to Bella, and even taught Annie how to unlock the door. They clearly want Annie to be able to barge into my place whenever she wants. My whole body trembling, I slowly pushed myself up from the couch. No. I can't just sit here and take this. This time, I'm going on the offensive. I used the security camera to record what was happening outside. The image was a bit blurry, but clear enough to see what they were up to. I walked over to the door and deliberately coughed loudly a few times. The noise outside stopped abruptly, and through the peephole, I saw Bella quickly pulling Annie away. They were clearly guilty as charged. I leaned against the door, my heart pounding wildly. Axel's betrayal felt like a knife plunged deep into my heart, but this was no time for grief. I had to uncover how many more schemes they were hiding. To get to the truth, I started keeping a close eye on Bella's every move. Using walks as an excuse, I often lingered around the neighborhood, chatting with the elderly ladies downstairs and subtly probing for information about Bella. The old ladies were all chattering away, and sure enough, I managed to pick up some useful information. Speaking of Bella, she's had a tough life too, Dora sighed, but then again, she doesn't seem all that attentive to her autistic daughter. Attentive, she's lucky she didn't abandon the kid. Don't you remember last year when the police showed up, she left Annie alone by the flood control dam? You'd think the girl was slow, but she remembered the phone number. The cops came and gave Bella a real talking to. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't harm its own cub. She's pretty heartless, who knows? Dora shook her head. I heard the child was born with health issues. Raising 2 kids alone must be incredibly difficult for her, but still, it's her own flesh and blood. How could she just abandon them like that? So that's how it is. It suddenly dawned on me, sending a chill shooting from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. Bella never actually wanted my help taking care of Annie. She'd been trying to get rid of this burden all along. Annie's death in my home in our previous life was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated scheme. After failing to abandon Annie, she set her sights on me. Knowing I was pregnant and home alone, more vulnerable and easier to persuade, she deliberately schemed to get close to me. Borrowing sugar that day was just an excuse. Her real goal was to get Annie into my house. Axel's so-called last-minute additional inspection was probably orchestrated with Bella, all to buy time and leave Annie alone with me. As for the air conditioner remote ending up under the couch, that might have been part of Bella's plan all along. She knew exactly how hot my living room gets in summer, and deliberately left Annie in that non-air-conditioned room. By the time I got home, it was already too late. Her plan was to let Annie die in my house and frame me for it, getting rid of the daughter she never wanted while extorting a huge sum of money, and my husband, Axel, actually helped her, even at the cost of me and our unborn child. I stood frozen, my head spinning. The tragedy from my past life wasn't an accident at all. It was a carefully orchestrated murder, and I was the chosen scapegoat. No wonder Bella was able to blow things up so quickly online. No wonder Axel abandoned me without a second thought. They were in on it together from the very beginning. I leaned against the wall to steady myself, barely able to stand. Tears streamed down uncontrollably, not out of fear, but from a deep sense of disappointment. But after crying, I grew even more clear-headed. In this lifetime, I won't let them succeed again. Bella, Axel, what you owe me, I'll take it back, bit by bit. I took out my phone, backed up the photos and videos I'd just taken to the cloud, then turned on the voice recorder and slowly made my way home. By the time I got home, Axel was already off work. He was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone. When he saw me come in, he didn't even look up as he asked, "Where have you been? What do you want for dinner?" After changing my shoes, I walked over to him and forced a gentle smile. "I was just chatting with the neighbors downstairs. I heard Bella's been having a tough time with the kids lately. How about we invite them over for dinner tonight?" Axel suddenly looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes that quickly turned to delight. "You've had a change of heart. You're willing to help her now. Neighbors should really support each other," I said, lowering my gaze to hide the coldness in my eyes. I was too self-absorbed before, always thinking about how hard my pregnancy has been while ignoring her struggles. "I bought some fresh ribs today. I'll make rib soup and a few side dishes. That should be enough for her and the 2 kids. Axel's face immediately lit up with a smile. "I knew you weren't cold-hearted. I'll go talk to her right now." As he said this, he started to get up to make the call. "Wait," I called out to him, deliberately feigning hesitation. "When you talk to her, don't mention that it was my idea. Just say you thought they've been working hard and wanted to invite them over for a meal. I'm worried she might think my sudden warmth is suspicious after my earlier cold attitude." "That's very thoughtful of you," Axel said without overthinking it, picking up his phone and heading to the balcony to make the call. I watched his retreating figure, a cold smirk curling at the corner of my mouth. "Think I want to treat you to dinner. I just wanted to see how much longer you plan to keep up this act." Half an hour later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Bella standing there with Annie and their youngest son, wearing a grateful smile. "Xiaosu, I'm so sorry to trouble you. Axel mentioned you made something delicious. I was hesitant to come, didn't want to disturb your rest. Come on in, make yourself at home." I stepped aside to let them enter, my gaze subtly sweeping over Annie. She was wearing a clean dress today, her hair neatly combed. But her eyes remained vacant as she kept her head down and fidgeted with her fingers. Bella set her youngest son down on the floor to play by himself, then offered to help in the kitchen. Need a hand with anything? No, just sit and relax. I stopped her, gently guiding her to the sofa. You've had your hands full with the kids. Take it easy today. Axel's in the kitchen. Let him handle things. I deliberately raised my voice. And Axel, who was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, immediately responded, That's right, Shuya, just sit back and relax. Let Xiaosu and me take good care of you today. Let me handle this. Your knife skills don't look very practiced. She said so but still went to the kitchen. I watched the two of them busily working, their backs turned to me. The between them far surpassed what Axel and I had. Every smile and every glance was deeply felt by the other. I think I've found the answer. During dinner, Bella kept serving Axel food. While Axel instinctively looked after her young son, they chatted and laughed together, almost like a family. After dinner, as soon as Bella left with the kids, Axel immediately wrapped his arms around me from behind, sounding pleased. I knew you'd come around. This is so much better, keeping things friendly with the neighbors. I pulled away from his embrace and looked at him coldly. Axel, are you really that eager to have them over at our place? He paused, clearly caught off guard by my sudden shift in tone. What do you mean? Weren't we just getting along fine? It's nothing, I said, turning to walk into the bedroom. I'm tired and need to rest. Axel was in high spirits, humming a tune as he headed into the bathroom. I noticed his phone lighting up on the nightstand while charging, and it happened to show a message that Bella had just sent. I had always trusted Axel completely, never felt the need to check his phone, and prided myself on giving him my utmost confidence. He was also generous enough to use my birthday as his lock screen password. My fingers trembled as I swiped open the screen, and my heart nearly stopped the moment I saw those messages. There was only one message in their chat history, a picture of a beer sent by Bella. The sound of running water echoed from the bathroom, and my hand trembled uncontrollably as I held the phone. This doesn't mean they were innocent. It suggests all previous records were deleted, and there must have been plenty of shady dealings. I felt the world spinning around me, my stomach churning with nausea. I quickly put the phone back in its place and forced myself to walk to the window, fighting back the urge to be sick. Outside the window, the night was deep and dark, with the streetlights in the compound casting a dim, yellowish glow. I stared at the lit window next door, feeling a chill settle in my heart. It seems the enemies in this lifetime are more numerous than I had imagined, for, the next day, I was woken by the doorbell. Bella stood pale at the doorway, a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. Her youngest son nestled against her shoulder with a low fever. Listless, Xiaosu, could you please watch Annie for me? Her voice trembled with tears, eyes red-rimmed. Jasper's temperature suddenly spiked to 39 degrees. I need to take him to the hospital right away. Annie is shy around strangers and will cry if others watch her. Could you just look after her for 2 hours? I'll come pick her up as soon as I'm back from the hospital. Okay. Annie stood behind her, head still bowed, fingers unconsciously picking at the hem of her clothes. Watching Bella's anxious expression and hearing the muffled whimpers of the child in her arms, I recalled how she had thrown tantrums in the past. I knew that refusing her again would likely draw immediate gossip from the neighbors. More importantly, I wanted to see what other tricks she had up her sleeve. I can only watch them for 2 hours, I said as I opened the door, my tone cool but firm. You must come back in 2 hours. I'm pregnant and not in a position to look after a child for long. Yes, thank you, Xiaosu. You're such a lifesaver. Overjoyed, Bella quickly nudged Annie forward. Annie, be good and stay with Auntie Sue. Mommy will be back soon. Without another word of instruction, she hurried toward the elevator, still holding the child. I closed the door, leaned against it, and stared at Annie. She walked over to the rug in the corner of the living room, sat down, and buried her face in her knees, like a silent statue. I poured a glass of warm water, placed it on the coffee table beside her, then walked to the center of the living room, quietly surveying my surroundings. All the windows were properly closed. The air conditioner's display was lit up, showing a room temperature of 26 degrees. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Not long after, my phone rang with a WeChat message from my husband Axel. Honey, I've prepared some bird's nest soup for you and left it in the kitchen. Remember to drink it while it's warm. It's good for the baby. Reading his message, my heart wavered again. Was I just being overly suspicious? In my past life, even though he eventually abandoned me, he had always been considerate in the beginning. Maybe this time, things would be different. I walked into the kitchen and, sure enough, found a thermal pot sitting on the stove. When I lifted the lid, the sweet aroma of the bird's nest soup greeted me, enriched with the coconut milk I love. I scooped a spoonful to taste. The temperature was just right, sweet but not overly rich. Since becoming pregnant, I've had a bigger appetite, and I couldn't resist finishing more than half the pot. Suddenly, I thought of Annie and hesitated about whether to save some for her. After all, she's just a child. I couldn't bring myself to hold an adult's mistakes against her. I just turned my head for a second when suddenly my temples felt heavy, and everything before my eyes began to sway slightly. Strange. I put down the spoon, bracing myself against the kitchen counter to steady my stance, only to realize my limbs were growing weak. It was only then that I noticed how unusually quiet the living room was. Even the sound of the air conditioner running had vanished. Staggering into the living room, I looked up at the AC display. The screen had gone dark. No matter how many times I pressed the wall switch, there was no response. My heart sank, and I quickly grabbed the remote from the couch. But it remained unresponsive no matter how many times I pressed the buttons. I opened the battery compartment and found the batteries properly in place, yet the device still wouldn't turn on. A chill ran down my spine as I realized something was wrong, and I turned to reach for my phone. Just then, I saw Annie lift her head. Her hollow eyes showed no emotion, just a fixed, vacant stare directed straight at me, leaning against the back of the couch. My trembling fingers fumbled for the phone in my pocket. The screen lit up. But I was stunned. The lock screen prompted for a password, and both my usual pattern and PIN codes came up as incorrect. Someone changed my phone password. The moment this thought crossed my mind, my consciousness began to blur, a buzzing filled my ears, and my body grew heavy as if filled with lead. I struggled to reach the door, but my legs gave out just steps away, and I collapsed heavily onto the floor. Warm sweat trickled down my temple and dripped onto the cold tiles. The temperature in the living room kept rising, with the late summer heat seeping through the cracks of the tightly shut windows, wrapping around me like a steamer. My whole body was drenched in sweat, breathing became increasingly difficult, and it felt like a hand was gripping my heart, squeezing it over and over. As I looked at Annie, still silent in the corner, I finally understood Bella's scheme. She never intended for Annie to die alone in my house. She meant for both of us to perish here together, and the one who helped her carry this out was none other than my own husband, Axel. They drugged the bird's nest soup, tampered with the air conditioning in advance, and even changed my phone passcode. They've cut off every possible escape route. The so-called accident in my past life was no accident at all, and the cruelty in this life is even more vicious. They don't just want me dead. They want Annie and me to die together in this room, leaving me forever blamed for the child's death. As my consciousness faded, I suddenly saw Annie standing before me, her eyes hollow and fixed intently on me. A sudden idea struck me, and I managed to utter the code for the lock with great effort. Annie has a particular sensitivity to numbers, and this sequence triggered her. She slowly turned around, walked to the door, opened it, and began fiddling with the combination lock. As the door swung open, a gust of cold air rushed in, instantly filling my lungs with oxygen and clearing my head a little. I remembered the emergency number, and thankfully, the call went through almost immediately. Just minutes later, the ambulance arrived downstairs. Watching Annie still engrossed in deciphering codes, my emotions were a tangled mess. I had to admit, in this lifetime, she was the one who saved me. At the hospital, the doctor explained that my coma was drug-induced. Fortunately, they caught it in time, and the fetus is stable for now, but I need complete bed rest. When Axel rushed in, his face was a mask of concern. He gripped my hand, apologizing over and over. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have bought those supplements randomly. It must have been the bird's nest. His eyes were red-rimmed. His performance was more convincing than in any past life. I looked at his hypocritical face, and my stomach churned. Once the nurse left the room, I pulled my hand back. My voice is calm and still as stagnant water. We can't keep the baby. The doctor said the medication exposure could lead to birth defects. Axel froze, then burst out agitatedly. Why? The doctor said the baby is fine. He said there's a chance. Can we really take that risk? Look at Annie, I said, staring straight into his eyes and enunciating every word. His gaze faltered for a moment. He tried to say more, but my icy stare shut him down. A few days later, I went through with the abortion. Despite his objections and my mother-in-law's curses, this man is utterly ridiculous. I'm carrying the child he never wanted, yet now he puts on this show of false compassion, playing the good guy to perfection. I never imagined I'd meet someone so despicable. On the day I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't let Axel pick me up. Instead, I had my mom take me straight back to my parents' home. My parents live in another city. They were heartbroken seeing how pale I looked, but they didn't press me with questions. I know some burdens you just have to bear alone. During my recovery, Axel called and texted every day, checking in on me with exaggerated concern. He even offered multiple times to come take care of me, practically groveling. The more he acted this way, the clearer it became that he was terrified. Terrified I'd uncover evidence. Terrified the truth would come to light. 5. And I was indeed investigating. I asked a friend to pull the surveillance footage from our neighborhood that day. While it didn't capture Axel entering the kitchen, it did show him lurking suspiciously in the living room for a long time before I left for my prenatal checkup. I had professionals test the residue in the thermal container, which confirmed the presence of sedative drugs. I even contacted the AC repair technician, who mentioned that the wiring on the outdoor unit showed signs of tampering, piece by piece. The evidence came together, pointing to a chilling truth. Axel had been part of this scheme from the very beginning. The accident in my past life might have been Bella's scheme, but in this life, they're outright accomplices, using two lives, mine and Annie's, to cover up some hidden secrets, perhaps debts, or even more sinister dealings. I spent a month recovering at my parents' home, gradually regaining my strength while my plan for revenge grew clearer in my mind. I will make them pay. Using the very methods they're so proud of, that day, I called Axel myself, my voice tinged with exhaustion. Axel, I've come to terms with it. We can have another child. Let's start over. Come pick me up, and we'll build our life together again. He was overjoyed on the other end of the line and eagerly agreed without hesitation. Back in that nightmare of a home, he did everything to please me, cooking, laundry, all of it. Trying to create the illusion of a loving couple, I watched coldly, playing along with his act while secretly biding my time. The opportunity came quickly. When Bella found out I'd forgiven Axel, she started cozying up to me again, always hinting at her struggles and hoping I'd keep helping with Annie. I knew she hadn't given up. I deliberately feigned hesitation, then reluctantly agreed on the condition that Axel be present, claiming I hadn't fully recovered and needed his assistance. Bella and Axel exchanged a glance and immediately agreed. On the appointed day, I added a small amount of colorless, odorless sedative to the living room humidifier in advance, just enough to cause drowsiness without immediate unconsciousness. I timed it perfectly, turning on the humidifier before their arrival, then pretended to be unwell and lay down on the sofa. Bella arrived punctually with Annie, while Axel thoughtfully went to the kitchen to fetch water. I watched him hand Bella a glass of spiked water, sneering inwardly. He really was willing to eliminate even his own accomplice. Before long, Bella started feeling dizzy and began speaking incoherently. Axel also swayed unsteadily, looking around in confusion. What's going on? My head feels so dizzy. He had no idea I'd tampered with the water cooler. Even the tea he brewed was compromised. You all stay here. I've got something to take care of outside, he said, struggling toward the door before his legs gave way and he collapsed. I braced myself against the couch to stand up, walked to the door and locked it, then picked up the spare remote I had prepared earlier and turned off the living room air conditioner. The late summer heat quickly filled the room, and the thermometer's reading shot up rapidly. Is it you? What did you do? Axel snapped back to reality, struggling to reach the door, but I held him down firmly. Bella collapsed on the floor, staring at me in terror. Xiao Su, please let me go. I was wrong. It was all his idea. Honey, I love you. Don't get the wrong idea. What exactly did you do? Axel was trying to salvage the situation, still playing dumb. I like people who tell the truth, I said with a smile, waving the remote control. I wanted to watch them turn on each other, and even more so, I wanted them to understand exactly why they were doomed. I'll talk. It was him. It's all his fault. Not long after you moved in, when you left for that 3-month training course, he used the excuse of helping me with the kids to sneak into my house and sleep with me. Bella is fighting for her life with everything she's got. Only then did I realize that her Jasper is actually Axel's son. No wonder he couldn't care less about my child. Whether they lived or died meant nothing to him. If you don't love me anymore, you could just divorce me. Why are you trying to kill me? I turned to Axel, my heart still aching as I asked. He owes a huge debt. He's trying to squeeze money out of you. Let me go. I'm being forced into this. I have children. Bella tried to appeal to my sympathy. Have you forgotten? I lost my child because of you people. What gives you the right to negotiate with me? I sneered and threw the remote control far away. This is murder. Do you realize that? You'll pay for this too. Axel still tried to threaten me. Am I the one killing? Clearly, it's you who's doing the killing. I smiled brightly. Look, you drugged us, wanting us to die here. As for why you're dying here too, is it because you know the debt collectors won't let you off? Don't want to live anymore? Then you'll need a suicide note. How about I help you write one? I giggled and patted Axel's face. He twitched a few times and then went still. I crouched down, watching them drenched in sweat and barely conscious, my voice as soft as a sigh. In my past life, Annie died in my home, and you drove me to my death. In this life, you want both of us dead. Now, let's all stay here together and make it lively. I walked to the window, drew back the curtains, and let the scorching sunlight flood the room. Then I took out my phone and played a recording, one I had secretly made earlier, of Axel and Bella scheming against me. The real show is just beginning. As long as she dies with Annie, no one will suspect a thing. Once the compensation money comes through, we'll disappear together. The voices on the recording grew fainter, their struggles weakening by the second. I returned to the bedroom, where the air was cool. The AC had been running all along. Annie huddled on the bed, sitting motionless with vacant eyes. Jasper slept beside her. I had taken them to the bedroom earlier, turned on the AC, and locked the door. They were innocent and shouldn't be dragged into this revenge. I took out the bird's nest and shared it with her. It contained the drug Axel had slipped in. We had to make the act convincing. Soon, Annie and I fell into a deep sleep in the bedroom. I don't know how much time had passed when I opened my eyes to find it was already dark outside. Pushing open the bedroom door, I was hit by a wave of foul stench. I screamed, flung the door open, and rushed out to call for help. By the time the police arrived, Axel and Bella had already stopped breathing. Their condition was identical to Annie's in the previous life. Gone without a sound under the combined effects of extreme heat and medication, I was sobbing uncontrollably, barely able to catch my breath, but I finally managed to explain the whole story from beginning to end. After my miscarriage, I was physically weak. My husband prepared bird's nest soup for me, which I shared with Annie before falling asleep in the bedroom. I was completely unaware of what happened outside. 6. The police quickly discovered that Axel had substantial debts and was involved in an illicit relationship with Bella, who had been pressuring him for money and blackmailing him using their affair. Additionally, their chat records revealed that they had conspired to harm me. The authorities soon concluded that this was a tragic case of internal strife triggered by the exposure of their plot. As both the victim and the one who reported the incident, I was cleared of all suspicion. After handling everything, I looked at Annie standing silently in the corner, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Bella was dead, her youngest son taken in by distant relatives, leaving only Annie, an autistic child. With no one to care for her, I couldn't just abandon her. Maybe it was a sense of shared hardship, or perhaps a desire to make up for regrets from a past life. I went through the paperwork and temporarily became Annie's guardian. As we left that nightmare-filled apartment building, sunlight poured over Annie and me, warm and bright. Holding her hand, I walked step by step toward our new life. The grudges of the past are now behind us. The road ahead may be tough, but I know that this time, both Annie and I will live well, for ourselves. Story 2. With 7 days to go, the image was incredibly vivid. A zombie, its face mottled with blood, lunged at me, its pale, ashen face growing larger and larger. I don't know where it bit me, but I lost consciousness. Now, when I wake up, it's evening. After graduating from university, I chose to become a live streamer. Used to sleeping in the afternoon, I'd wake up and start my live streams. I'm not sure if the scene just now was a dream, but I remember one part of it very clearly. If I had a chance to start over, then tonight a celebrity's live stream would be overwhelmed with fans. The reason I remember so clearly is that I was once a fan of that star. The nostalgic filter from my childhood made it unforgettable. By 9 o'clock, a trending topic suddenly exploded. Someone's replacement. It's a rebirth. In 7 days, a global catastrophe of a zombie virus will break out. Initially, it appeared in just a few coastal cities and was quickly dismissed by official denials. I never paid attention to such baseless stuff, and after echoing a few online calls to trust science, I ignored it. Just 3 days, only 3 days, the zombie virus became uncontrollable. Initially, officials used drones to announce they wouldn't give up on anyone, but a few days later, even the drones disappeared. In my previous life, I survived a month and a half on stockpiled snacks. As the snacks ran out, I had no choice but to venture out for supplies, only to be tackled by a zombie before I could even leave my residential complex. It was truly a tragic experience. Last time, the signals cut off too quickly, and what troubled me the most was not knowing whether my parents were safe until the end. Thinking of this, I hurriedly called my parents. "Hello, Mom and Dad. It's snowing in City A. Can you come see me? I want to eat dumplings. Mom, come help me make some." My parents are typical Chinese parents, complaining about my inability to do anything despite my age, yet still agreeing to come over the next day. Fortunately, my parents live in the neighboring City B, so it doesn't take them too long to travel here. It's reassuring to have them close by sooner. After retiring from their teaching positions, they started to enjoy their retirement at home. I've repeatedly suggested they move in with me, but they always felt they would be a burden and refused. They visited me about once every month, bringing a carload of food each time. Thinking this, I quickly sent my dad an Instagram message. "Dad, don't forget the sausages I love." Sausages last a long time without needing refrigeration. In my previous life, it seems like the electricity stopped on the 3rd or 4th day of the outbreak, and I hurriedly noted down the electrical issues on an A4 paper. The A4 paper was packed with notes. Since completing my university thesis, I hadn't engaged in such intense mental activity, honestly. Even the thesis wasn't as exhausting, since this was directly linked to survival. It had been so long since I last used my brain like this, and even though I had napped in the afternoon, I was still incredibly sleepy. I placed the A4 paper under my pillow, thought about the tough battle ahead tomorrow, and drifted off to sleep. 1. First, reinforce the doors and windows. I live on the 21st floor, and after graduating from university, I bought this top-floor apartment with my earnings from streaming. Honestly, it was because I was broke and didn't want to ask my parents for money, so I chose a location far from the city center. Little did I think that during the apocalypse, this neighborhood would actually be safe. There aren't many supermarkets nearby, but luckily there's a warehouse-type supermarket, Metro. Thinking this, I hurriedly called the installation company to have someone come and reinforce the doors and windows. "Miss, your door is already sturdy enough, like a bank vault door, it doesn't need reinforcing." This door was my dad's insistence, saying it's not safe for a girl living alone. If it were up to me, I definitely wouldn't choose such a heavy door, but I couldn't argue with my dad back then. I then had the workers replace all the glass in the house with the highest grade of bulletproof glass and add a layer of one-way film. It was supposed to take 3 days to complete. But I handed over an extra 10,000 yuan, and the workers were grinning from ear to ear. "Master, can we aim to finish the work this afternoon? My mom is visiting, and she suffers from paranoid delusions." It seemed apparent to them that money wasn't an issue for me, as one of the workers even took the liberty to ask if I wanted to install safety rails. Install them, I don't drive. Which made gathering supplies a major hassle. I was forced to learn during college by my dad. Initially enthusiastic, my resolve was shattered by a driving instructor who relentlessly criticized me. After failing the second level test 5 times, I gave up. To avoid getting scolded by my dad, I convinced him, "Don't worry, autonomous driving technology will be perfected soon." I first took a cab to Metro, and on the way, I checked my bank balance through mobile banking and Alipay apps. The income from my years as a streamer was substantial, amounting to over 700,000 in total. I planned to discuss finances with my parents when they arrived since, with their contributions, we could probably muster up about 1.5 million. The list of things to buy was long, and I dared not opt for home delivery. In these apocalyptic times, people can be the most terrifying threat. I headed straight for the instant food section. Ideally, I would have purchased these items online, staggered across different locations. But the ongoing pandemic in City A and the existence of 2 epidemic control zones meant no deliveries could get through. I cleared the shelves of about 150 self-heating hotpot kits, 100 self-heating rice meals, and over 50 portions each of Huainan beef soup and duck blood vermicelli soup. Fortunately, the shopping carts at this warehouse-style store were huge, so I pushed 2, while queuing to pay. I got a call from my dad. Despite his age, he has a truck driving license. I made up an excuse to get him to come over to Metro. "Dad, can you rent a truck and come over?" Yes, I'm using it for a giveaway for my streaming audience." The workers messaged me to say that the bulletproof glass was installed. I paid them immediately and added, "The epidemic has worsened recently. Make sure to buy some extra food to keep at home." With my dad on his way, I could buy more items. So I quickly handed the unpaid goods to a clerk to watch and began another round of shopping. 10 cases of yogurt, each containing 12 bottles, 15 cases of sparkling water, each containing 12 bottles, 20 cases of instant noodles, each containing 24 packets, 50 high-voltage power banks, 50 cases of mineral water, each containing 12 bottles, 15 cases of snail noodle soup, each containing 12 packets, 10 bags of flour, each weighing 20 kilograms, 10 bags of rice, each weighing 20 kilograms, 100 boxes of chips, 20 boxes of hand-torn bread, 50 packs of soy milk powder, 50 packs of black sesame paste. I planned to install solar panels in the afternoon and also bought 50 kilograms each of pork, beef, and lamb. Our home refrigerator was too small. I needed to buy 2 large freezers. These items would definitely not be enough. Although Metro is a warehouse store, it wasn't advisable to buy too much from a single place. Just after paying, my dad arrived in the rented truck. As the supermarket staff loaded item after item into the truck, my dad joked, "Girl, you're really splurging. How much stuff are you giving away?" As soon as we got into the truck, my dad turned serious. "Zoe, what's really going on? You've changed the windows at home, bought all these supplies, and hurriedly called your mom and me over." I had thought about this question last night. Making up excuses gave me a headache, and I knew I couldn't keep it from them any longer, so I decided to tell the truth. My parents are elderly and experienced the famine years. Perhaps because they later became high school teachers, interacting daily with the new generation's children, they sometimes accept new things even more readily than I do. When I told them I had died in our neighborhood in my past life, my dad's eyes welled up with tears. Death might seem distant, but parents can always empathize with your suffering. Just reinforcing the doors and windows isn't enough. We also need to ensure that everything is soundproof. What if the noise is heard and people come up to rob us? My dad is the type who acts first and thinks later. He was talking to me and dialing my mom at the same time. This solved the problem I had been worrying about all of last night. The truck still had 1/3 of its space empty, so following the GPS, we headed straight to the market and bought a load: 10 bags of potatoes, 150 kilograms, 10 bags of cabbage, 150 kilograms, 10 boxes of apples, 20 kilograms, 10 boxes of oranges, 20 kilograms. I remember reading zombie apocalypse stories in college where the protagonists would always keep chickens, so I quickly shared the idea with my dad. "No way, chickens make noise." Then, my eyes caught sight of fish. Clapping my hands, I said, "Let's raise fish. Today is Wednesday, and most people in the community are at work, plus the occupancy rate is low due to the location on the outskirts." The three of us managed to move the supplies to our small attic without attracting any attention. My mom, a biology teacher, glanced at the supplies we had and suggested we buy some seeds. There was still so much missing at home, so I left my mom to organize while my dad and I rushed out again. We headed straight to a Sam's Club in another district of City A, with my dad, who's been shopping his whole life. Things were much more organized this time. 20 bags of rice, 20 kilograms each, 20 bags of flour, 20 kilograms each, 50 boxes of canned fruit, 20 cans per box, 30 boxes of various meats, 20 cans per box. 50 packets of noodles, 50 boxes of mineral water, 12 bottles per box, 15 boxes of bread, 50 boxes of nanchang mixed noodles, 15 boxes of snail noodles, 12 packets per box, 20 cans of soybean oil, 20 kilograms each, 20 bottles of dish soap, 2L each, 20 packs of toilet paper, 12 rolls each, 30 bottles of shower gel, 700 milliliters each. 50 bottles of laundry detergent, 2L each. We might not need so much since water will become a luxury, but my mom has a slight obsession with cleanliness, worst case. We could purify rainwater. Although City A is in the north, it paradoxically has a lot of rain. 50 toothbrushes, 50 tubes of toothpaste, 20 bars of soap. Only my dad uses these. 50 bottles of shampoo, 600 milliliters. We took a bit of every brand. 20 boxes of egg yolk pastries, 6 per box. 50 bags of sausages, sanitary pads. We cleared the shelf. And I figured it would last me until menopause at this rate, since Metro is far from home, and I work as a streamer and am not well known in City A. I went all out buying supplies, thinking about the power and gas going out soon after a zombie outbreak. I quickly had my dad install solar panels. He's a high school physics teacher, so this minor issue wasn't a problem for him. If we run out of natural gas, we can't use our stove anymore. Thinking of this, I hurriedly bought 5 air fryers, 5 small pans suitable for stir frying, and 5 rice cookers. Plus I grabbed 2 electric hot pot stoves. While checking out, my dad turned on his acting skills. "Zoe, your boss really doesn't know how to handle things. It's one thing to donate money to charity, but why think of donating supplies, and why send a girl to buy them? We bought so much that the cashier was grinning from ear to ear. It must be a donation for the epidemic area." Companies come here from time to time to buy in bulk. After having the staff load the goods onto the truck, my dad and I headed straight to the mall. This was a reminder from my mom, since zombies could break out. Who knows if the weather might turn extreme? Although City A is in the north, what if there's some extreme weather? 5 sets of summer pajamas per person, 5 sets of winter pajamas, 10 sets of home clothes, 10 pairs of summer slippers and 10 pairs of winter cotton slippers per person. 7 pairs of sneakers per person, 15 cotton quilts, 15 thin quilts, 20 sets of bed linens, 8 down jackets per person, 10 sweaters, and numerous summer clothes, 500 sets of disposable underwear. When we got home, the soundproofing was already being installed, perhaps because my mom paid generously. About 8 or 9 workers came for our 100-plus square meter house. While no one was paying attention, I asked my mom where everything was being stored. The rooftop. It's an unspoken secret among the residents. The rooftop has always been part of the top floor. When we bought this apartment, I had been up to the rooftop. Since the building is tall, the rooftop is about 1.6 meters high, making it the tallest nearby. One can go up there without being noticed by bending down. Thankfully, with my parents around, I never had to think about soundproofing or anything like that. The payment was substantial, and the job was done well. The work sped up naturally. And by a little past 8 in the evening, it was done. After the installer left, the family moved items from the rooftop to the attic and then brought up the rest from the truck. We still need to buy some medicines and some multivitamins. We're also running low on water. So, tomorrow, Zoe, you and your dad go buy water, visit several stores and buy a little from each. I'll go buy seeds and soil tomorrow. I'm just worried that due to the pandemic, no pharmacy will dare to sell antibiotics. I paused for a moment, realizing that we probably weren't short on medicines. I ran inside and brought out 2 medicine boxes. "Mom, you forgot. Every time you and Dad visit, you bring a lot of medicines, all with the latest expiry dates. The last batch was just 10 days ago." Seeing the 2 full medicine boxes, the family felt relieved. "Although your dad and I don't have high blood pressure or anything, we should still buy some just in case." Dad and I busied ourselves moving supplies down from the rooftop. We were truly exhausted today, and Mom just whipped up some simple noodles for dinner. The next morning, we quickly had some milk powder and bread before heading out. For 6 days left. "Dad, don't forget the solar panels, and the big freezers. We can place the freezers in the study room. There should be enough space for 2. No sooner said than done. We headed straight to the mall and bought 2 large freezers. Thankfully it's cold now. Otherwise, the meat we bought yesterday would have gone bad. We also bought several solar power setups, just in case one fails. Even though Dad says he can fix them, you never know. While buying the solar equipment, we also picked up some heavy blackout curtains from next door. There was still space left in the truck, so Dad and I went directly to buy water, drinking water 10 barrels, 19L each. Mineral water 10 packs, 12 bottles each. Then we loaded up the things Mom bought. Various seeds 50 packets, including easy-to-grow vegetables and fruits like cabbage, bok choy, potatoes, tomatoes, cucumbers, unmilled wheat 10 bags, 30 kilograms each. These have a long shelf life and can be milled by hand if necessary. Chicken breast 50 kilograms, chicken wings 20 kilograms, chicken feet 20 kilograms, beef 20 kilograms. With that, the truck was fully loaded. On the way back, we stopped at a pharmacy to buy some compact medicines, like vitamins, high blood pressure medications, etc. Purchasing small quantities from several stores, we also bought 20 tubes of dermatitis cream, 10 tubes of clobetasol, and 20 bottles of vitamin E cream. The morning passed by just like that. Thankfully, the elevator was spacious enough to fit the freezers, and we moved the items up in several trips. After a quick lunch, as Mom was too tired to continue, she stayed to organize things while Dad and I went out again to shop at large supermarkets like Auchan. Salt 70 packs, soy sauce 10 boxes. 12 bottles each, vinegar 5 boxes, 12 bottles each, cooking oil 3 boxes, 12 bottles each, toilet paper 20 packs, 12 rolls each, facial tissues 20 packs, 12 packs each. We also bought some soybeans, which could be used to make soy sauce if we run out, something my mom did when she was less busy during my childhood. By now, we had used up all the shopping vouchers from Carrefour, Yonghui, and Bailey and He. I didn't even realize I had accumulated so many shopping vouchers. 5 days left. Today's tasks were much lighter. The only thing we were short on was water, which needed multiple purchases. Oh right, we also needed to buy some self-defense tools, just to be fully prepared. We drove the truck and bought 50 barrels of water, each 19L. I also bought several kitchen knives and a few small knives for self-defense. Passing by a gym, I suddenly thought of buying a treadmill for home use. Running a bit every day is essential to keep up fitness. Although we've done all we can to prepare, you never know. Remembering this, I visited a car dealership and took a liking to a motorhome. The salesperson raved about its bulletproof level, high chassis, and safety features. Yesterday during dinner, I mentioned that if things get too tough, we might need to leave, so having a vehicle with a high safety rating is essential. I followed the salesperson to complete the paperwork, and we arranged to pick up the vehicle in 3 days. When I got home, I found that Mom had bought a lot of lemons today. They last long, especially if kept in the fridge, serving as a vitamin supplement for the period after we run out of apples and oranges and before the tomatoes ripen. For days left, my dad took my mom out and managed to stock up on a lot of supplies. I have no idea how he managed it, but he even brought back several barrels of gasoline. We'll load them onto the RV once it's back, and if things get bad, we'll just leave over the next few days. I tried to live stream daily, advising everyone to stock up on supplies. Forgive me for not saying more. I am just too insignificant. I only want to be well with my family and truly can't play the role of a savior. After getting home, my mom went about sorting the supplies as usual, while my dad continued to finish building a dry toilet on the rooftop. Besides the pathways and sleeping areas, our house was filled with supplies. My grandparents and my mom and dad's siblings had passed away early, so that wasn't a concern. However, my mom did hint to a few of her close colleagues to stock up more at home, using the old excuse that the pandemic had worsened. Better safe than sorry. After all, my mom has always been stern, so her words carried a lot of weight. It's not that we didn't want to be transparent, but the situation was really unscientific. If it weren't for their blind trust in me, my family wouldn't have believed it either. My parents live in an apartment block bought by the high school, which is not only densely populated but also located in an old downtown area with poor security, hence the decision to stay in City A. Of course, that was the reason I gave them to convince them to come over. We bought around 200 barrels of drinking water at home, including various kinds of mineral water and beverages, and also purchased several large water collection devices and plenty of water purification tablets, so water isn't a concern. A few days ago, my dad had already set up the solar panels and, after testing them without issues, connected the power supply to the refrigerator and 2 large freezers. The real challenge was dealing with the garbage. I found out that the apartment next door was unoccupied, so I rented it to store our trash. It's crucial to handle sanitation properly. With 1 day left on the countdown, it felt like a throwback online as violent incidents started appearing in coastal areas. After a glance at each other, my dad took out a heavy-duty lock he bought from the hardware store and locked the staircases from the 19th to the 21st floor, which we observed were unoccupied these past few days. Mom and Dad We'll definitely be alright. 6. The zombie outbreak began. Since the incident appeared on Weibo, we had set up shifts at home, mainly because I forgot when exactly the zombies appeared in City A. While we still had internet, the three of us hurriedly downloaded variety shows and TV dramas on our phones and iPads. My mom also bought a bunch of books, saying learning never ceases with life. Whether we'll actually read them, I don't know, but I guess they'd definitely hurt if used as weapons. Today was my shift. While watching the story of Minglan, I looked out the window. With the experience from my past life, I knew these zombies were particularly sensitive to light, so we stopped turning on lights at night. This tactic prevented both zombies and human threats. Suddenly, I saw the security guard at the entrance of our complex stumbling towards us, followed by two blood-covered people. The guard was shouting for help. But it was too late, around 2:30 a.m., and besides me, probably no one else saw this. It's not that I didn't want to help, but it was really beyond saving. I have good eyesight and could see the bloodstains on the guard's arm, even under the dim streetlights. It took less than 2 minutes for the guard to stop shouting for help and start wandering aimlessly like a headless fly. I dialed 110 to report the situation in our complex while running back to wake up my parents. My dad was quick to accept new things, but my mom was scared and finally asked, "Can these things still turn back into humans?" No need for me to answer. My parents knew the answer too. Seeing my mom scared, my dad comforted her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. "What's there to fear? As long as we're together, even if the sky falls, I'll protect you both." With all the commotion, it seemed unlikely we'd sleep, so we simply held a family meeting to discuss everything. To kill them with one blow, you can only aim for their heads. Hitting other parts is useless. They don't feel pain anymore. Don't worry, your mom and I have already learned about this from watching The Walking Dead a few days ago. Seeing that my parents had calmed down, I took a deep breath and said the last thing. "Dad, Mom, there's something I must tell you. In a post-apocalyptic world, the most terrifying thing is human nature. We can only ensure our own safety. We can't be saviors. I know you've been teachers all your lives, but now we need to prioritize our own safety." Fortunately, my parents are not overly compassionate. They exchanged a glance and slowly but firmly nodded. "Don't worry, we understand, as long as our family is safe." The first day of the zombie outbreak, I was on duty until 6 in the morning, unable to sleep, so I waited to eat the breakfast my mom made before going to bed. Around 7:50 a.m., as people started leaving for work, I had a bad feeling. Then I saw a man with a briefcase leaving the building across from us. Typical of the modern youth, he was playing with his phone while walking and completely unaware of the person who pounced on him from behind, biting his arm and not letting go. "Damn it, are you crazy?" he cursed. As he shouted, another zombie approached. The man finally realized something was wrong and started running back towards the building, screaming for help. Out of nowhere, an elderly man who was out for morning exercise came forward and knocked down the two zombies. But before he could say anything, he was tackled to the ground by the man he had just saved. "Get off, get off." I couldn't bear to watch the scene unfold. Many people were out for work in the morning, which meant that the casualties were inevitably high. Eventually, the residents of the community realized something was wrong, and no one else came out. Feeling sleepy, I gave a few instructions to my parents and then went back to my room to sleep. When I woke up at noon, my mom had already cooked lunch. The zombies had just broken out, and utilities like water and electricity were still stable, but as we agreed last night, it was best not to turn on the exhaust fan. The loud noise of the exhaust fan was a minor issue compared to attracting other survivors. With just the three of us, our physical strength was not enough to defend ourselves. We'll make do with a lower quality of life. With our stockpile of supplies, we should be able to hold out until rescue comes. If we run out of supplies before help arrives, we wouldn't survive anyway. One thing different from my past life is that, up to now, we still had a signal. In the community's homeowner group chat, they were tallying up survivors from each household. With the outbreak just beginning, some still hoped that order had not yet collapsed. After discussing with my dad, we decided, let's not report our status. We have enough supplies. And since there are only a few of us, what if someone comes to rob us? I agreed completely. While I was washing up, my mom, serving the lunch, said, "This morning, the group chat mentioned that they're all doing well." She was referring to her former colleagues, who had also hinted at having stored some supplies. Lunch was stir-fried cabbage and tomato beef, and we each had an orange after the meal. After lunch, I'll keep watch while Zoe and your dad take turns running on the treadmill. Just then, my phone suddenly rang with a video call, which was very loud. I quickly turned down the volume and switched to voice mode. It was one of the property management staff from the community. "Hello, are you at home? We're tallying up the survivors." And I didn't see a reply. The family exchanged glances. "Oh, I'm not at home. I'm at my hometown." "That's fine." Then, after hanging up, we looked at each other again. "Do you think, what did he mean by making a video call?" My dad was quick to respond. "I remember, a few days ago your mom and I took the RV to go shopping, and on the way back we ran into someone who asked us why we were buying so much stuff. This matter could be big or small. The three of us immediately put down our utensils. Although I had taken another elevator card a few days ago using the excuse of losing one, we still worried about the what-ifs. In our building, each elevator serves 2 apartments, and without an elevator card, you can't get up. Zoe, do you remember when the power outage happened? In about 2 or 3 days, that's bad. My dad went up first, stopped the elevator on the 21st floor, and then cut its power. Although it's inhumane, we had no choice as long as our family is safe. To be honest, we don't even know how many families live in this building. We kept the elevator running initially considering other people's need for escape. Actually, this might be better. Stairs are safer anyway. In case of emergencies, the elevator would be disastrous. That's how we consoled ourselves. I'm not a saint. I won't put myself in danger thinking about others' escape. But still, it feels uncomfortably wrong. Zoe, stop thinking about it. I checked with your dad earlier. Although the elevator goes directly to the underground parking, the elevator shaft is pitch black, which makes it more dangerous. Using the stairs, whether going up or down, offers a higher chance of escape. We could only console ourselves like this. After dinner, my dad took the shower head to water the seeds in the foam box. Since it was daytime, a tiny corner of the thick blackout curtains on the balcony was opened, just enough for a sliver of sunlight to come through. Before he finished watering, I saw a drone flying nearby, followed by an automated broadcast. Dear residents, we are facing an unprecedented disaster. Please stay at home and wait for government rescue. Please believe in us. We will not abandon anyone. Honestly, I'm curious why in my previous life I never saw any rescue until my death. I'm just too ordinary, too insignificant, and too selfish. Even if I had another chance at life, I just want my family to live well. After watering, I started watching the self-defense techniques I had downloaded a few days ago. Suddenly, the community loudspeakers blared, "Dear residents, let us believe that there is hope." Suddenly, like headless flies, zombies began searching for the source of the sound. The loudspeakers were installed at the entrance of each unit, and I couldn't understand why in the 21st century we couldn't solve everything through mobile phones instead of using these loudspeakers. As soon as the loudspeaker sounded, zombies nearby instantly surrounded the building. I cursed in my mind. Zoe, will they come up? I couldn't remember this from my previous life. I was alone and scared during the day and just slept through it. Mom, don't worry. We are on the 21st floor. It's okay. That's what I said, but I wasn't sure myself. Thankfully, it was just a false alarm. The loudspeaker stopped, and the zombies scattered again like headless flies. I noticed a man who had gone to work with a briefcase this morning. His arm was covered in blood, wandering aimlessly, still dressed in his suit, looking like a white-collar worker. What a pity. On the 3rd day of the apocalypse, there were still only daily drone announcements urging people to stay home and not give up, but the rescue was delayed. Most young people living in this area worked at a nearby factory, and young people generally don't have the habit of stocking up on food. If it weren't for the snacks I had stockpiled from Singles' Day sales and the items gifted by manufacturers in my previous life, I wouldn't have survived a month. This morning while my dad was on duty, he saw a man and a woman running out from the unit building across, wrapped tightly from head to toe, moving cautiously. Around the 13th floor, a window was opened. 2 heads, one older and one younger, popped out. The child, around 12 or 13, clutched a drone. Attached to the drone's tail was a mobile phone. As the man and woman left, the child quickly launched the drone, sending it flying in the opposite direction. Not everyone parked their car in the underground parking lot. Some were parked alongside the roads within the residential area. The drone, flying in the opposite direction, suddenly emitted a loud noise, loud enough to attract all the zombies nearby. The man and woman who had run out seized the opportunity to quickly get into their SUV. I have a strong impression of this man and woman. They were among the first to venture out in search of supplies and return safely, bringing back a substantial amount of goods. As I recall from my last life, this family never ventured out again before I died. Sure enough, about an hour and a half later, the couple returned in their car. The young boy, who had been watching the entrance of the complex, saw his family's car and quickly sent the drone off in the opposite direction again. The couple had a fruitful haul. The trunk and back seat were packed full, with likely every space except the seating crammed with supplies. Just like in my previous life, after delivering the supplies upstairs, the couple turned around again. I knew they were going out to look for solar panels and would come back with 2 vehicles. In many ways, the courage of this couple was admirable. Soon, when the community's supplies ran low and everyone had to venture out for more, the number of zombies would increase, making scavenging more difficult. Around 2:30 in the afternoon, the couple returned in 2 vehicles. The man drove a truck, and the woman drove their SUV. The nearby zombies had already been lured away by the young boy. The couple hurriedly carried the goods upstairs. The truck was filled entirely with water and rice. In this life, I could observe more closely the variety of items the couple brought back: solar panels, canned goods, grains, oils, household supplies, and even seeds and soil. Oh, And they also brought back a large bag of potatoes. Potatoes are easy to cultivate and could be a vital food source later on. The woman opened the passenger door, revealing a large bag full of medicine. Although I knew from my previous life that they made it home safely, I still breathed a sigh of relief. The couple should be safe at home now. The boy retracted the drone and closed the window. This couple sent a signal to everyone. Go out and search for supplies now. While there are fewer zombies and while supplies are still available, my mother stopped watching TV and focused on that family, relieved to see them safely home. They really are brave. What's even more courageous is what they'll do tonight, if I remember correctly. They might just clean out the entire metro. At around 11 p.m., when it was my turn to keep watch, I saw the couple who had just returned in the afternoon head out again. The young boy controlled the drone, sending it far away, even fitting a small light on it, going all out to protect his parents. Honestly, although I don't know what it's like outside now, judging by this couple's 2 safe returns, they are quite formidable. As expected. This time they brought back 2 large trucks full of supplies. On their final trip, the couple drove the trucks back, returning in their SUV, bustling around until nearly 5 in the morning. In households with elderly and children, doors and windows are usually of the highest security. Thinking this way, this family might also be able to survive to the end. My mother has been a high school teacher for many years, even serving as a homeroom teacher. She wakes up before 6 every morning due to her biological clock. I shared all this with my mom, and she sighed. Life is tough for everyone. On the 4th day of the zombie outbreak, the water and electricity went out. It started with just the water. While preparing dinner and about to add a spoonful of water, I realized the tap had run dry. At the same time, the old man washing up still had his mouth full of foam when the power went out. My dad, who was watching TV, sighed and remarked that life for the average resident was going to get even tougher, even if one wanted to venture out for supplies, considering most apartment buildings now are around 17 or 18 stories high, and given the general lack of fitness among the younger generation, hauling supplies up floor by floor could very well be a deadly chore, and that's the best case scenario. What if there's a zombie on one of the floors? When I woke up in the afternoon, I discovered the internet was also down. The last messages in the community group chat from this morning were still just urging everyone to await rescue. For our family, these issues haven't had much of an impact. My dad, the old man, was still cheerfully watching TV, even jokingly telling my mom, "This martial arts master on TV has the same surname as me. Maybe we were related 500 years ago." Since the power outage this morning, we haven't turned on any lights at home. In these extraordinary times, it's okay to lower our standard of living a bit, as long as we ensure our safety. A drone flew by again, still broadcasting the same old message to await rescue, but this time it added that supplies would be dropped. Hearing this, cheers suddenly erupted from one of the buildings. My dad, with his keen eyes, noticed that the entrance of the building directly opposite, where a man in a suit had emerged, was broken before the apocalypse. This might have been a minor issue, but now, it's a matter of life and death, undoubtedly a reduced layer of security, especially since from that building came the sound of a heated argument, loud enough to attract 3 zombies. The zombies, like headless flies, slammed into the broken entrance, which immediately gave way. The folks in the opposite building finally sensed something was wrong and the noise ceased. However, the zombies remained inside. Although they couldn't use the elevator and were clumsy on the stairs, they would relentlessly advance based on instinct. These 3 zombies were bound to pose a significant threat to the people in the building, both in terms of escaping and fetching supplies. On the 6th day of the zombie outbreak, a young man and woman ran out of that building, moving cautiously towards a car while looking around. Suddenly, the man stepped on a soda can. The zombies inside the building instantly rushed out, and the man pushed the woman back and ran ahead. My dad watched and cursed. The woman, clearly unprepared, was knocked down by the zombies while still looking in the direction the man had run. He had already reached the car and was about to close the door when another zombie attacked him out of nowhere. The heaviness of this scene made it hard for us to eat much breakfast the next morning. Our family fell into silence. If the man had saved the woman that morning, maybe both could have survived. Before I could think of how to console my parents, my dad spoke up. "We need to be very careful. Our family isn't strong in combat, and if real danger comes, I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you and your mother. I wouldn't die in peace." Realizing this was what worried my dad the most, I playfully coaxed him to eat more, saying, "Then Dad, you have to take good care of yourself. What would Mom and I do if something happened to you?" Starting today, everyone's time on the treadmill increases by 10 minutes. After announcing this decision, my dad went back to quietly eating his meal. Since the power outage, our home has kept only a small desk lamp on during the night shifts. One night on duty, I suddenly wondered if the family in the building next door really lived on the 13th floor. The time it took for the elevator to go up and come back down didn't seem like it was just from the 13th floor but rather from around the 16th or 17th floor. I remembered hearing from a salesperson when we first bought the house that there was a very wealthy family in the complex who had bought 7 floors intending to rent them out. There's a major factory nearby, and a few more under construction. If not for this disaster, they'd probably start hiring next spring. The 996 work culture and housing subsidies make it more attractive for young people to rent nearby, despite the higher cost. Thinking about it, that family was really quite smart. Knowing that bringing back so many items would attract attention, they decided to use a cunning plan akin to a rabbit having multiple burrows. By casually leaving some supplies on the 13th floor, they could cause people to come knocking, fighting over the resources. Meanwhile, they lived on a different floor, locked all the safety doors, and with the elevator stopped, they felt that family would be really safe. On the 8th day of the zombie outbreak, just after I finished breakfast and was about to go to sleep, I noticed a group of 5 people coming out of the building, each carrying a backpack and bending over as they headed towards the entrance of the complex. It seemed they had parked their car at the entrance, planning to flee, but they would soon realize that the outside world was no different. It was a zombie carnival. How could individual strength compare to that? The 5 moved extremely cautiously, but they hadn't gone far when I heard noises coming from the building they had just exited. It was the sound of a cell phone alarm set to maximum volume, presumably timed by them before leaving to draw the zombies away. However, this could endanger any other survivors left in the building, potentially leading to their deaths at the hands of zombies. My mom, who was washing rice at the time, came over to watch and shook her head at this behavior. Only their own lives matter to them. Sure enough, as soon as the group left the complex, I heard cries for help, likely from a family in the lower floors of that building being attacked by zombies. Suddenly, I saw 2 men wielding axes, covered in blood, dash out of the building and sprint towards the complex entrance. Indeed, those with strong combat abilities tend to survive better. In the afternoon, my dad leisurely watered the seeds he had planted. City A welcomed its first snow since the outbreak began. Being in the north, City A usually had plenty of snow in winter, but the snow from before the apocalypse had long since melted. My mom brought out 2 quilts, adding one to my bed. In northern cities like City A, people relied on underfloor heating in winter because it was too cold otherwise. Virtually impossible to survive. But now, we had to make do with layering more blankets and wearing more clothes. Seeing my dad rubbing his hands while keeping an eye on things, I brought him a cup of hot water, only to hear him sneeze suddenly, putting our family on high alert. We didn't have many medicines, although we had bought a lot of herbal medicines and some relevant books. My mom hadn't fully understood them yet. In a rush, my mom prepared a traditional medicinal drink for my dad and then urged him to go to sleep, saying, "You better get some rest. In this post-apocalyptic world, your health is your capital." Fortunately, by evening my dad felt much better. While cleaning up the kitchen, my mom found several packets of hot pot base that I had bought at some point, and seeing some fatty beef and meatballs still in the fridge, we held a family meeting and decided to have a hot pot to warm up. Having hot pot was indeed a luxury, but we might as well enjoy it occasionally for warmth. We started with meatballs at the bottom and began adding vegetables once it boiled. We had bought a lot of cabbages and potatoes. My mom had calculated a few days ago that even by next year when the crops we planted were ready, we probably wouldn't have finished eating what we bought. Afraid that the seeds would freeze, my dad quickly found an old military coat, made some cuts for ventilation, and covered the seeds with it. The spicy oil base was simply irresistible. We had been eating quite bland food lately, but the spiciness now made me feel like I could eat an entire cow. It was incredibly delicious. We dared not open the windows to ventilate, so we ate while the steam nearly blinded us, yet we were exceptionally happy. Towards the end, my mom suddenly mentioned, "It's about 5 or 6 days until the new year." The older generation always placed great importance on the new year. In 5 or 6 days, if there had been no zombie outbreak, I would probably have already been home by now, lazing at home, constantly nagged by my mom, "Wake up, eat, sleep." As my mom went on and on about marriage, peanuts and sunflower seeds lay on the coffee table, but now, all our family could think about was surviving in this apocalyptic world. "Mom, let's make some dumplings. We bought a lot of flour, and the fish we raised should be ready to eat next year," I suggested. "Okay." The snow had been falling for 2 days straight. I saw about 7 or 8 people trying to break out of the neighborhood, but sadly, most of them perished at the hands of zombies. The cold severely hindered human activities, but it didn't affect the zombies, creatures oblivious to such conditions. Over the past few days, I noticed that one of the elite male zombies seemed to have weakened significantly. He probably hadn't fed in a long time. I mentioned this to my mom, and she came over with a piece of paper filled with chemical equations that I couldn't understand. Some people must have noticed this by now. It seems that dealing with the zombies is just a matter of time. All we need to do is wait for rescue. I forgot to mention, from the 6th day of the zombie outbreak, no drones flew over anymore. On New Year's Eve, our family joyously made dumplings together. I was eating dumplings with cabbage and pork filling and wanted to drink a Coke. but considering the unusually cold weather, I thought it might upset my stomach and decided against it. In the middle of the night, the three of us stayed up, planning to celebrate the new year together, projecting an old spring festival gala on the iPad. Suddenly, I heard the sound of car engines, like those modified off-road vehicles emitting a frightening roar. I hurriedly jumped up to look out the window. My mom quickly turned off the TV, and the living room darkened and quieted down. The three of us lay by the window, watching a line of 5 or 6 off-road vehicles enter the neighborhood. It was only the 16th day since the zombie outbreak had begun. Even though my dad had mentioned that many criminals might treat this apocalypse as a celebration, it seemed too soon for such chaos. We didn't want to think of this convoy as bad people, but as soon as they entered, they blocked the neighborhood's exit, using the dim solar-powered street lights. Watching them drag 2 women out of a vehicle, dressed in tattered clothes, it was clear that these women wouldn't meet a good fate. They actually had guns. In our country, civilians are not allowed to have guns. Where did these guns come from? One of them shot a zombie dead instantly. Luckily, there weren't many zombies around. If this were a bustling area, that gunshot could have attracted a horde of them. I can't recall the specifics from my previous life, but I remember they began looting the neighborhood soon after, and within 3 or 4 days, probably 20 or 30 people died. Eventually, the smell of blood drew more zombies. They had guns but couldn't withstand so many zombies and eventually became zombies themselves. Because of this, the number of zombies in the neighborhood drastically increased. They couldn't stay. I briefly explained the situation to my parents. My dad pondered for a while. Zombies are sensitive to sound and smell. I have a way to attract the zombies, but how will we get them to leave? Should we just let them roam around the neighborhood? Dad is right, but we must make plans early. If I remember correctly, they will start looting the neighborhood tomorrow afternoon. They hadn't reached our building in my past life, but I fear things might change this time. All 3 of us were heavy with worry. Moreover, even if we managed to attract the zombies, we absolutely must not reveal our location. What if other residents see us? The room was too dark, making me feel irrationally scared, afraid that even in this new life, I might not be able to do anything, afraid I couldn't protect my parents, afraid that, just like in my previous life, I would end up as a meal for the zombies. Suddenly, my mom had a flash of inspiration. Smell, right? I can create something similar to the smell of blood using what we have. It should last about 3 hours. The 3 hours we use to attract the zombies should be enough. After 3 hours, we will use drones to drop scent of blood in unpopulated areas. That should probably work. Sorry, I know nothing about chemistry. I'm just making this up. By the way, my mom is a high school biology teacher. For most people, high school is the peak period of knowledge accumulation, and the subjects of math, physics, and chemistry are intertwined. If my mom says it's possible, she must be very confident. The drone was just something I bought when I had nothing better to do, purely because it was a trend online. I never imagined it would come in handy. The drone has a flight radius of 8 kilometers, which is perfect as there's a reservoir about 3 kilometers away, in an uninhabited area where we can drop the payload. My mom, excited, added, "If it's too far and the scent isn't strong enough, we can control the drone to drop more along the way towards the reservoir." Gradually drawing the zombies over. Once we had the plan, I stayed behind to keep watch and sent my parents to sleep, ready to implement our plan the next morning. Early the next day before dawn, my mom was already up. Since the power and internet went out, the old quartz clock in the house had come in handy. It was only 5 in the morning. "Mom, why don't you sleep a bit more? I need to take care of the situation outside. Otherwise, I can't sleep peacefully." She then went up to the attic where, during the initial days of stocking up, she had bought all sorts of things, thinking that in an apocalypse, we might as well be self-sufficient. I hadn't expected these supplies to be used so soon. Just as my mom went into the attic, my dad also got up. Seeing my mom busy, he willingly went to the kitchen to cook. He made a simple porridge, a fried egg pancake, and pan-fried some pork loin to wrap in the egg pancake, brushed with some sweet bean sauce. Just as he was about to serve the food, my mom had finished mixing the chemicals. I hurriedly went to the storage room to get the drone. The chemical mixture was overall red. I found a sanitary pad, soaked it in the mixture, then attached it to the drone, making sure it could carry it. Then, the 3 of us started monitoring the drone. Our building was located deep inside the residential complex, so deploying the drone discreetly wasn't likely to draw attention. For safety, my dad maneuvered the drone to place the sanitary pad behind the tree at the security room. After the drone returned, my mom quickly began eliminating any remaining scent of blood in our house. Although the effect was only supposed to last 3 hours, you never know. To be extra safe, I even contributed my own perfume. After heating up the food and just starting to eat, we heard gunshots within the complex. My dad grabbed his unfinished egg pancake and went to check at the security room. A crowd of zombies had gathered, some in tatters, clearly infected early on, while others only showed pale, recently turned faces. The people there were panicking as more zombies encircled them. Their vehicles were parked near the security room door. Their only way out was through the zombie crowd. Gunshots continued, relentless. It was unclear if they had breached some armory. Otherwise, where would all these bullets come from? Humans are intelligent creatures, but despite having guns, they were overwhelmed by the sheer number of zombies. Suddenly, I spotted what seemed like a leader among the zombies, a city beauty in a skirt, dressed in a distinctly chic style. She stood behind a group of zombies, not moving forward, but through binoculars. It was clear she was gesturing, possibly commanding. I quickly informed my parents. My dad, looking grave, took the binoculars for a closer look and slowly nodded. It seems that zombies have evolved intelligence. They might continue to evolve. The main thing now is, what extent will they evolve to? This matter was too heavy to bear. After my mom finished putting away the dishes, she saw my dad and me sighing heavily, and couldn't help but pat us on the back. Enough of that. It's pointless for us to dwell on this issue. Rather than worrying about it, we should think about whether we watered the plants today. Also, Zoe, it's time for you to go to bed. Don't worry about it. As she spoke, my mom pushed me towards my room to sleep. Her words seemed to ease my dad's spirits too, and he picked up the watering can to water the plants. The snow had not yet melted completely, and the battle at the entrance of the residential area had finally come to an end. Only 3 of the armed individuals managed to escape in a vehicle. The pristine white snow was dotted with specks of blood everywhere. Day 20 of the apocalypse. Today, drones suddenly appeared, which didn't align with my memories from my past life. In my previous life, to conserve resources, I ate very little and spent most of my time in a drowsy state of sleep. Thinking about it now, there might have been drones back then too, but perhaps I just didn't hear them because I was asleep. The drone announced that the government had established a secure base in the coastal area, guarded and safe, and urged residents to make their way there on their own, along with the drones. Supplies arrived. Supplies tied in red bags fell from the aircraft, containing a few bottles of water, some bread, and medicine. Moreover, it was stated that these supplies would only last for 5 days. In essence, it was a way to compel everyone to head towards the secure base. As soon as the supplies were dropped, I saw many people rushing down to gather them. Fortunately, the zombies in this residential area had been lured away by my mom's method. Otherwise, who knows how many might have perished. Seeing the supplies on the ground, my dad, while watering the plants, remarked, "It's good that there are few people in this neighborhood. What if there were more? Limited supplies, unlimited greed. Without zombies, humans would destroy themselves." I couldn't agree more. In the afternoon, I noticed several cars leaving the residential area. These cars were clearly from people who knew each other. It must have been a few families who had agreed to go to the secure base together. More people on the road meant a higher chance of surviving if they encountered zombies. But is it really safer with more people? As promised, the supplies lasted only 5 days. On the 6th day, numerous cars, around 10 to 20, left the neighborhood. But according to our observations, the family that had gone out for supplies did not leave. That made sense. That family had a child and an elderly person. Probably only the couple was capable of fighting. Why leave if they had enough supplies? On the 28th day of the zombie outbreak, while my dad was on duty, he noticed a drone being launched from the building across from ours, heading our way. The 3 of us exchanged glances and still decided to take down the note attached to the drone. "Hello, we have been observing you for a long time. We mean no harm. You must also know that we have enough supplies, and you probably do too. We would like to form an alliance with you, to keep watch together." After consulting with my parents, my mom, looking at the dark circles under mine and my dad's eyes, nodded. Although we were not short of food or clothing, keeping watch for 8 hours a day was exhausting, especially since my mom couldn't stay up at night. Leaving my dad and me to take turns, it was impossible to sleep carelessly during the day. In just 1 month, we had all developed dark circles under our eyes. Let's form an alliance. Even if only the couple over there can keep watch, it will still be much easier for us. When the drone flew back, the family also sent over some fresh bok choy. Unexpectedly, the family indicated that they could have 3 people on watch duty. My dad was delighted. This way, each of us only needs to watch for 4 hours a day. That makes things a lot easier. Thus, the alliance between the 2 families was formed. To show goodwill, my mom added a bottle of calcium tablets specially for the elderly. The other family had elderly members, and although they had plenty of supplies, they probably didn't have the luxury to think about calcium tablets, which are not essential. With 3 more people on duty, our family of 3 felt much more relaxed. On the 29th day since the zombie outbreak, it snowed again. Even someone as oblivious as me could feel the abnormal drop in temperature since the outbreak. Although winters in city air are cold, it was never this severe. One snowfall followed another. My fingers were freezing red. My mom brought 2 quilts and several military coats to the sofa, pulled over the foldable bed, and we leaned on the sofa playing poker. It was the turn of the family across to be on duty. and we were enjoying the leisure. I also opened a bag of chips, munching and encouraging my mom to have some. My dad, probably about to lose at cards again, hurriedly announced he was going to cook. Since the weather turned unusually cold, our meals were almost always stews, warm and comforting. Today we had noodles with chicken breast and some spicy sauce. I had a full bowl and finally felt warm. My mom let the melted snow water sit to make sure it wasn't too cold before using it to water the plants. Although water was plentiful, it was still best to be cautious. We didn't know when the zombie situation would end, and it was always good to save. The snow didn't stop, covering the previous bloodstains and eliminating any smells, leaving only the vast whiteness of snow everywhere. These past few days, I noticed no one else in the neighborhood going out or coming in. Apart from our family and the one next door, it seemed everyone else had either moved to safety bases or hadn't survived the harsh winter. The bok choy my dad planted was thriving. We had already eaten some and even shared some with the other family, who in return gave us 2 eggs. Eggs were a rare find. My dad was afraid of making noise, so he hadn't dared to keep chickens. But my mom said that wealthy families might have a soundproof chicken coop at home. Both for peace of mind and to avoid disturbing neighbors, it seemed likely that the family next door had one. Our house is just over 100 square meters, cramped just with supplies, let alone space for a chicken coop. That night, my mom made egg drop soup with noodles, and eating it made me feel utterly comfortable. During the night, the north wind howled, and the weather was exceptionally harsh. I couldn't sleep due to the cold. When initially buying supplies, I had asked about getting an electric blanket, but my parents thought our electricity was only enough for the basics and couldn't support an electric blanket, so we gave up on that idea. Just as I was about to go on watch, my parents' bedroom door opened. "Zoe, is it too cold?" My mom went up to the attic and dragged down 3 large boxes of heat packs. We bought these the last time we went out. We were worried it would get too cold, and it might be hard to sleep at night. After distributing one to each of us, I took out another pack containing 10 pieces. "Let's give this to that family tomorrow. They have elderly members who probably struggle to sleep. We only use one each at night, and with 3 large boxes, we definitely have enough." Sure enough, after delivering the items the next day, the family sent over a piece of meat. Attached was a note. "It's clear that a child wrote this. Thank you. My grandma has bad legs and is sensitive to cold. With this, she can finally get a good night's sleep." The main reason we initially decided to form an alliance was that this family seemed decent, even during peaceful times. Some people disregard the safety of the elderly, so what about now in these apocalyptic times? Moreover, this family genuinely cares for the elderly. I clearly saw the couple bringing back a lot of soy milk specifically for seniors. No matter what, their hearts must be in the right place. From the exchanges we've had over the past few days, I'm increasingly convinced that we made the right decision. Day 31 since the zombie outbreak, it rained, and the roads are now icy with snow. A few zombies shuffled over, one of them slipped on the ice and never got up again. As I daydreamed, I thought about the 2 books I delivered to the children of that family yesterday, wondering how far they've read. It's not every day you meet a child who is still learning. It's reignited the passion my parents had from their years of retirement. They set daily homework and correct it. They meticulously write out corrections and explanations for any mistakes or misunderstandings. The commonplace things from before the apocalypse now strangely give me hope. Both families considered living in the same building, as the apartment next to mine is vacant, and I have the keys. Initially, we thought to use it to store trash, but my dad and I decided to dump the garbage in the small lake behind instead. Observing from our homes, it seems that within at least a 5-kilometer radius, it's just our 2 families. Staying together sounded safe, but eventually, we decided against it because it would be inconvenient. Although it's close, what if something unexpected happened on the way? We had enough supplies to keep lying low, so why take unnecessary risks? This decision was ultimately made by majority rule. My mom sent over the last dozen dumplings from our fridge. Dumplings, which require a lot of flour and filling, are not about being stingy, but about conserving supplies. The man of the house is Gabriel, and his wife is Eliza. Before the apocalypse, Gabriel was a fitness trainer, and Mrs. Eliza was a doctor. On that day, Mrs. Eliza was off work and planned to spend the afternoon out with Gabriel, the elderly, and the children. This family fortunately survived. Doctors, a rare profession in the apocalypse. That day, they nearly cleared out a pharmacy. They even offered us whatever medications we might need. Day 48 of the apocalypse, a woman in a down jacket and sneakers, with disheveled hair, ran into our area, screaming incoherently, probably just to vent her fear. We decided not to make a sound to help, fearing the family across might. Luckily, they also seemed to be very cautious. We had observed that within a 5-kilometer radius, there were no humans, only zombies. Where did this woman come from? How did she make it through the zombie-infested area? I didn't live through this time in my past life and don't know what happened, but it doesn't stop both our families from staying highly vigilant. We lost sight of which building the woman entered. Then, a truck arrived at the entrance of the complex, and about a dozen young people, both men and women, jumped out. I quickly pulled down all the blackout curtains at home. We used to pull them up slightly for the seeds we planted, but now we can't care about that. My mom also stopped cooking and came out of the kitchen. She took out a few pieces of bread and boiled some water. Just make do for now. Be careful. In the afternoon, that group of people hadn't left yet. They took out some food from their car and about a dozen of them gathered around to eat, lately, with plenty of sleep in the cold weather. Even my parents started to sleep in the evening. The whole family was on watch. We saw them put out the fire, leaving two to keep watch while the rest got into the car, probably to sleep. I noticed sharply that the woman from earlier seemed to be gradually approaching those people in the car. I couldn't figure out what she was up to. Then I saw the woman hurting herself with something as she got closer. Soon, the zombies that had roamed into our neighborhood a few days earlier approached as well. The watchers noticed and quickly woke everyone up. The woman rushed towards them like a mad person. Finally, that group hurriedly drove away. We didn't know what had transpired between them that made the woman disregard her own life. Desperate to take a bite out of them with such determination, after being bitten by a zombie, the woman started spinning in place. Seeing this, everyone's mood sank. My mom asked if we had helped that girl during the day, could she have survived? Mom, we can only save ourselves in the latter part of the night. It was that family's turn to keep watch, and each of us took a hand warmer and went to sleep. Since I had sent a bag of hand warmers over last time, I sent 2 more packets, which made that family repeatedly say no more were needed. They said only the elderly needed them. They had plenty of blankets at home, and the others could withstand the cold. The sun hasn't been great these days either, apart from 2 refrigerators. Other electric appliances are only connected when needed. I realized it's been a very long time since I last had a bath. With the cold weather and the need to save water, nobody even mentioned bathing. Day 50 of the zombie outbreak, the chives we planted started sprouting, bright green. I was so excited that I didn't do anything all day but watch the chives sprout. I checked on them even when drinking water or after meals to see if they had grown. There are still quite a few lemons in the fridge. Intact lemons can be stored in the fridge for over 3 months. My mom had bought a lot at that time. I took some honey out of the fridge and sliced some lemons into it to make honey lemon water. Our family's daily meals are quite good, and since the zombie outbreak, none of us has even had a mouth ulcer. Now that the chives have sprouted green, I suppose by the time the weather warms up, the tomatoes, cucumbers, and cherry tomatoes we planted will be ready to eat. The stored apples are a bit wilted but otherwise okay. The oranges, however, don't look too good and there are too many left over. It would be wasteful not to eat them, so my dad has been sending them to Gabriel's family using a drone. The drone can't carry much, and it's rare for my dad to be this patient. Once finished, we received 5 eggs as a gift from Gabriel's family. We learned these days that Gabriel's family indeed has a chicken coop, initially just a whim of the grandmother. But who knew it would become so useful in these times? But they only have 2 hens, which started laying eggs about a week before the apocalypse began. They lay just 1 or 2 eggs a day. These 5 eggs were accumulated over several days. Thinking of Gabriel's family with elderly and children, my mom sent them some vitamin C again. In the evening, I cooked noodles, made 3 soft-boiled eggs, and saved 2. Mom, remember to eat those eggs with Dad when you get up in the morning. You and your dad eat them. I don't really like eggs, though we have sufficient supplies. Once we consume things like meat or eggs, they're gone. The last time I made cola chicken wings, my parents kept waving their hands, saying they didn't like them, but how could I not understand their true feelings? My mom loves chicken wings, and my dad has a sweet tooth, although they've been eating less in recent years due to their age. It's not possible that they don't enjoy it. Being stuck at home for so long really brought out my frustration, and I snapped, "Fine, if you won't eat, neither will I." It took a while before I spoke up again. Mom and Dad, we have plenty of supplies. I know you're worried about running out and want to save everything for me, but think about it. If we don't have enough even with all these supplies, how could I possibly survive on my own? Don't you know me? I can't do anything without you. After much persuasion, I finally got through to them. My dad didn't say anything but silently increased his time on the treadmill each day. One early morning, as I got up for my shift to keep watch, I saw my dad just finishing his and about to go to bed. I quickly handed him a warming pad. "Dad, go get some sleep." It seemed like overnight, the weather had warmed up. However, to be cautious, my mom insisted that we shouldn't put away our blankets yet. Sure enough, the temperature dropped significantly at night, and anyone with too few covers would surely catch a cold. It seemed that as the weather warmed up, the zombies began to increase in number. Suddenly, groups of blood-soaked zombies started appearing from nowhere. Previously, we had observed that only an isolated few zombies showed signs of intelligence, and to this day, that's still the case. Most of them still follow their instincts, running towards any scent of blood or noise. Every time I went to the rooftop to use the bathroom, the air seemed even more putrid than before, as if the stench had fermented over the entire winter, nearly knocking people out. On the 59th day of the zombie outbreak, the chives grew rapidly and were ready to harvest. My mom, delighted, harvested them and even shared some with Gabriel's family. Letting the rest continue to grow, when the drone returned, it brought back a small bag of sliced beef and a note. Be alert, there seems to be a horde of zombies. It's hard to see from afar. Tonight, 2 of us will keep watch. You should have someone on watch too. The whole family went into high alert. I quickly made some porridge, then checked the doors, windows, and blackout curtains. That evening, my dad and I stayed up for the night shift. My mom, turning back every few steps, instructed. If you get hungry, remember to heat up the porridge in the microwave. Call me if there's any trouble. Around 3 or 4 in the morning, I suddenly heard a tremendous noise, as if the earth and mountains were shaking, making the entire apartment building tremble. The solar-powered streetlights in the neighborhood had long been broken, and all I could see was a dark mass, like a black sea without borders. I shivered involuntarily at the sight, but my dad, seeing the zombie horde, actually breathed a sigh of relief and went to heat up some porridge for me. I don't think they'll stay. Strangely, as soon as the sun came out, the zombies stopped moving, and we could see a large group of them not far from our complex. My mom was terrified when she woke up in the morning. I patted her shoulder to comfort her. Mom, let's not cook today. With so many zombies around, any noise might be too dangerous. Let's just have some bread. After catching up on sleep in the afternoon, I started observing from the window again. Could they be afraid of the sun? Why, I remember when the zombies first appeared, they weren't afraid of the sun. On the 60th day of the zombie outbreak, my dad and I stayed up for the night shift again. My mom, unable to sleep, joined us as well. I sliced the last few oranges. These oranges were almost dry, just enough to taste like oranges. From nightfall until now, the zombies still hadn't moved. No, to be precise, they hadn't moved since the early hours of the morning. Around midnight, the zombies finally started to stir. There were so many of them that their movement felt like an earthquake, and I involuntarily clenched my fists. Fortunately, the tide of zombies didn't pass through our neighborhood. It went straight south just in front of our area. I could clearly see that the zombies felt no pain. They just moved forward, plowing through any obstacles without deviating. How powerful was this tide of zombies? A 7-story residential building crumbled under their relentless onslaught. I was so terrified that I was speechless, and when I turned around, I saw even my usually calm father sweating profusely. We didn't dare to think what would happen if the zombie tide passed through our area. We would just be caught in the middle, with death all around us, perhaps truly frightened. My mother developed a fever the next day. It was my father who noticed something was wrong. It was afternoon, and my mom hadn't gotten up yet, so he hurried to check on her. That's when he found her lying in bed, her face flushed and her forehead frighteningly hot. My father quickly got the medicine box, and I made some porridge until it was very soft and fed it to my mom. On the 67th day of the zombie outbreak, I harvested some spinach and sent it to the people across the street using a drone, receiving 3 buns and 2 eggs in return. The buns seemed homemade. It made me think of all that flour we had bought before. Being from the north, our family usually prefers flour-based food, but since the outbreak, it's been easier to prepare rice-based meals. At noon, our family decided to make some dumplings and wontons. We filled the dumplings with chives and eggs. We had harvested chives twice already. They grow and age quickly. We didn't have many eggs left, just those that Gabriel's family had given us and we hadn't finished. The wontons were filled with pork and beef. It was a big task, so I washed my hands and hurried to help make the dumplings. After we finished, we shared half with Gabriel's family. Gabriel's family has really been wonderful, offering us sincere kindness in these apocalyptic times. On the 191st day of the zombie outbreak, it seemed like there were no more living people in the city. After that last zombie tide, we noticed quite a few people grouping together and driving away to escape. The resources in City A were already scarce, not to mention that before the outbreak, there were 2 epidemic control zones in City A, which hindered deliveries. Over the past 6 months, my mom had speculated more than once about the cause of the zombie outbreak, always guessing it was related to the pandemic, thinking this outbreak was caused by a foreign virus that erupted during the pandemic. Since the onset of summer, the stench of decay in the air had worsened, and occasionally we would see a few wandering zombies, tattered and bloodstained. The foul smell was so intense that every trip to the rooftop toilet required wearing 2 masks. The weather was also exceptionally abnormal, unbearably hot, likely over 40 degrees Celsius. The only good news was that the cucumbers and tomatoes we planted were ready to eat, but fearing discovery, we had planted only a few on the balcony. The good news was that we had 2 balconies, so it ended up being a decent amount. Later, we gradually sent Gabriel's family 4 cucumbers and 4 tomatoes. There are still 2 small tomatoes, a few eggplants, and some chili peppers left. Gabriel's family was clearly overjoyed, sending over a few bottles of cooling oil and even wrote a note asking my mom how she managed to grow these, wondering why their own plants always died. In winter, we have hand warmers. But what about the summer? It's so hot that I can't sleep, so I might as well tidy up and start sleeping on the floor in the living room. During the day, I freeze water in the fridge and take it out at night to cool the living room, providing some relief from the heat. Since the weather turned hot, taking showers became a must. Thankfully, although the weather is abnormal, the rainfall remains plentiful. I purify the collected rainwater with a water purification tablet and then boil it to use for bathing. The leftover water is just enough for washing clothes. Day 213 of the zombie outbreak. I tore off the calendar first thing in the morning and suddenly realized that the zombies have been around for more than half a year. These past 7 months, we have witnessed the city slowly losing its vitality. It feels like we are just numbly surviving, eating, drinking, exercising, and waiting for national rescue. If it weren't for Gabriel's family, we would probably have gone mad if left as an isolated island. Suddenly, I remembered that my mom's birthday is in 2 days, so the family decided to celebrate her birthday. Even in these end times, at least our family is together. We had just finished making a cake and were about to send some over to the neighbors when, before even opening the curtains, we heard the sound of engines. It was the sound of large motorcycles. Today was Gabriel's family's turn to be on duty, and they were just about to launch a drone for a warning when the motorcycle gang approached too quickly. We quickly checked for any oversights in the house and then quietly observed. It looked like a formal convoy. They wore uniform dark green outfits with guns at their waists. After stopping at the entrance of the neighborhood, they split into 2 groups. One to check for zombies and the other to take backpacks off their backs. I have good eyesight and clearly saw that the backpacks contained pure water and bread. This group did not search the buildings. In the evening, they cleaned the security room, left a person to keep watch, and the rest went to sleep. We did not dare to act rashly. The next morning, the group packed up and prepared to leave. Before leaving, they cleared any wandering zombies in the neighborhood. Someone who seemed to be the leader shouted, "Please wait a little longer. I assure you, in no more than 3 months, we will resolve all this." A person at the end of the line took supplies from a motorcycle. "Residents, if there are any survivors, we have left supplies for you. We still have missions to complete and cannot guarantee your safety if you travel with us." After they left, I almost cried tears of joy. And my mom almost cried too, covering her mouth. It looks like the vaccine must have been successfully developed. Now, we just have to wait. Day 215 of the zombie outbreak. We finally saw a glimmer of hope. Neither of our families took the pack of supplies. We have plenty and didn't need that little bit, preferring to stay safe at home. Plus, leaving it might give hope to anyone else passing by. I also made milk tea with taro balls and sent 4 cups and half a cake to Gabriel's family with a drone when my mom made her wish. She held hands with my dad and me. I hope this catastrophe ends soon. I hope our family stays safe and sound. On day 219 of the outbreak, the temperature soared to a new high of 47 degrees Celsius, and the air was filled with a foul stench. The heat made it impossible for me to eat. I barely managed a few bites of chicken cold noodles before I couldn't eat anymore. My mom found the tomatoes that had been frozen in the water yesterday and gave some to Gabriel's family. She mixed the rest with sugar, making a sweet and sour appetizer that really whets the appetite. The weather has been incredibly hot, so at night we sleep directly on the bamboo mats and just use a jacket for cover. I managed to endure the scorching heat and wash the clothes, ending up soaked in sweat. These past few days have been sunny, and our solar panels have gathered plenty of energy. It's not that the air conditioner wouldn't work. It's just that it's installed outside and using it would make a lot of noise. At night, we kept both fans running nonstop, knowing that the elderly suffer in the summer heat. We dug out some mung beans from the attic and boiled a large pot of mung bean soup. Once it had cooled down, we hurriedly used a drone to deliver some to Gabriel's family. We received 3 eggs from Gabriel's family. It's really the best they can offer. Given their circumstances, Gabriel's family rarely asks us for anything. Firstly, they themselves are well supplied, and secondly, they stick to their own resources. The only time they asked for something was recently when they inquired if we had any cooling patches, as it was unbearably hot and neither the elderly nor the children could sleep. Such items are rarely sold in supermarkets, and we didn't have any stock. I rummaged through our belongings and found a small fan I bought during my school days. The kind you can hold in your hand. Considering Gabriel's family has many members, I sent them the fan along with some water-soaked tomatoes. Day 222 of the zombie outbreak brought a sudden torrential downpour. The rain was so heavy that visibility was completely obscured, and after about 3 hours, it intensified and was accompanied by hail as darkness fell. The temperature dropped sharply, and my mom brought out some jackets for the family to wear as we watched the rain. The rain was so heavy that by evening, the lake behind our complex had begun to overflow, and the ground was covered in sewage. "Mom, Dad, this rain is too much. I'll stay up tonight to monitor how high the water might rise," I said. My dad woke up in the middle of the night and insisted that I go back to sleep while he kept watch. When I woke up the next day, it was still raining. Although we had ample solar energy stored, we didn't want to waste it. Fortunately, there was still hot water in our kettle. Each of us had a bowl of instant noodles to get by. Just a few days ago, the heat was unbearable, but it seemed like overnight, the temperature had drastically dropped. The water from the lake had spilled over. Given the rain's intensity, I figured the ground floors in our complex were likely doomed, but our high floor wasn't a concern, seeing that the rain wasn't going to stop anytime soon. I gave up on continually monitoring it. In the afternoon, I saw many zombies washed into the complex by the rainwater, floating in the water, a dark red mass emitting a foul smell. I wonder how that squad is doing. I hope they found shelter from the rain. The rain lasted for 3 days. Ever since the zombie outbreak, the weather has been abnormal. I was about to use the drone when I heard the sound of motorcycles. It was the same few people from the other day. Only now their clothes were dirty, covered in blood and dust. They were still divided into 2 squads, casually sitting down to eat bread and drink water. We have an old radio at home, which my dad managed to fix. Over these days, we've learned through the radio that rescue operations are indeed underway, and observing these people, we could tell they were organized. My mom had already prepared a small portion of ribs and placed it on the drone. Let's send it to them. Almost the moment our drone took off, Gabriel's family's drone also launched. The squad stood up, on alert with their weapons ready. Watching them, my heart ached. In these apocalyptic times, they've surely faced much malice. 2 drones halted not far from them, and the person who seemed to be the leader cautiously checked them, discovering sweet and sour pork ribs, braised fish with soy sauce, and a bit of rice inside. The portions were small as the drones couldn't carry much. Suddenly, I felt like crying. The apocalypse really tests people. Even though we aren't worried about food and drink, we still live in fear every day. I pulled back the curtains and opened the window wide enough to stick my head out, shouting, "Keep going, and be careful." The little boy from Gabriel's family also stuck his head out and saluted. The group saw us, and I noticed some of them started crying, overwhelmed by the sight of living people and the kindness in our hearts. "Do you want to come up for a while? I can cook you a meal," I offered. After saluting, the group shook their heads. My dad recalled the drones and kept sending them back and forth with the lunch we had prepared. As the group left, they told us to wait a little longer, to hold on for just 2 more months, and they promised they would secure a stable living environment for us. Before the squad left, my dad sent down plenty of mung bean soup with the drones, which he had cooked before dinner. It hadn't cooled down yet, but it was refreshing. We knew we couldn't do much, but we did what little we could. Day 232 since the apocalypse erupted, the group visited again. My mother guessed that our neighborhood was less populated and safer, not requiring constant vigilance against attacks from behind amidst a sea of corpses. The apocalypse is a revelry for those devoid of morals. We were quite familiar with them by now, seeing them arrive. We started sending food down with the drones again, lacking cups. My dad used empty mineral water bottles to send mung bean soup down repeatedly. On the last trip, a note was attached to the drone, asking if they could clear out the zombies in the stairwell. The squad agreed. After all, they were tasked with clearing zombies anyway. My dad and I stayed by the fire escape on the 18th floor. Hearing a knock, my dad opened the door, greeted by a dozen young men in military uniforms, drenched in sweat from the high floor and hot weather. True to his former profession as a teacher, my dad, with his persuasive skills, managed to convince the group to come up, where my mom had already prepared a full meal. "Sorry for tricking you into coming up this way." The group chatted with my mom while eating. "You're really lucky to have found so much food early in the outbreak. You don't know. It turned into hell on earth just a few days after it started." My mom fabricated a story about starting a shop with her daughter, mixing truth and fiction. Since the zombie outbreak, we hadn't ventured outside, and naturally, we didn't know the exact situation out there, which led us to ask more questions. As we had guessed, it was a global disaster. The rescue operation started from the heart of Jingjinji and worked their way down. Many cities were now safe and undergoing reconstruction, but the national loss was severe. Too many had died in this catastrophe. Perhaps eating and talking too much made the youngest in the group nearly cry. They were afraid too. Who isn't afraid of death? But wearing the uniform meant they had to live up to it. As we saw them off, I gave them plenty of canned goods, small in size and tasty. They could improve their meals, since living off just mineral water and bread isn't much of a life. As the group left, they reminded my dad to lock the stairwell again to ensure our safety. 268 days after the zombie outbreak, I was baking a cake. I had always been interested in baking before the apocalypse, but I could never quite settle down to do it. No, I finally had the peace to focus on it. The squad came by again, followed by the sound of a drone broadcasting, "Dear citizens, winter will eventually pass, and hope will always arrive. City A is now secure. The national defense personnel are stationed there. We will do everything possible to ensure your safety." Hearing the broadcast, I suddenly burst into tears. It's finally over. By day 280 of the outbreak, zombies had been completely eradicated nationwide. On day 317, the last zombie was killed in Europe, putting an end to the nearly year-long catastrophe. Despite the irreversible damage to humanity, life persists as long as we are alive. Side story, Gabriel's family. More than 3 months had passed since the catastrophe ended. Yet Gabriel still occasionally woke up terrified from dreams of the zombie outbreak. He felt incredibly lucky. He was a gym instructor, and his wife was a hospital doctor. They were both off work that day, and their son had been unwell for a few days, so they had taken leave, which, combined with other fortunate circumstances, allowed them to remain safe. Gabriel remembered clearly. He was about to go feed the chickens as usual in the coop his mother had set up out of boredom. Gabriel came from a well-off family. His father had passed away early, and his mother lived with them as an elderly lady. She had embraced the Chinese spirit of nurturing, taking to chicken farming. To avoid complaints, they even installed soundproofing in the chicken coop. Initially, Gabriel was against this idea as it seemed troublesome, but his wife convinced him, saying, "Eating eggs from our own chickens is so much healthier." Once his wife had spoken, he naturally couldn't object. Just as Gabriel was about to enter the coop, he suddenly heard a scream so loud it woke up Mrs. Eliza and their son. The old lady was cooking and came over after hearing the noise. Gabriel was immensely grateful that they lived on the 17th floor. If they had been on the first or second floor, his grandmother, with her curious nature, would definitely have gone down to see what was happening. That would have been a mistake. Their son, who was in middle school, suddenly exclaimed, "That looks just like a zombie." Gabriel and his wife exchanged a glance. Mrs. Eliza suddenly remembered something an ICU doctor had mentioned a few days earlier about the virus potentially evolving, fearing it might become zombie-like. What did she say? "It's definitely a virus from a lab." They both immediately thought of zombies. Being fans of zombie movies, they recognized the obvious signs. "George, you and Grandma stay inside. Do not go out. Mom and Dad will go lock the safety passage," Gabriel said as he and Mrs. Eliza left. They had originally bought several floors from the 13th to the 17th for future plans, like George getting married and living just below them, and to rent them out once the nearby factory was completed. Since the factory wasn't built yet, the properties were not rented out. This arrangement made them considerably safer. By the time they had secured the safety passage and returned home, George had already explained the situation to his grandmother, knowing she might not believe it. He even turned on the TV to explain. By the time they returned, the old lady was already inventorying their supplies. "Gabriel, we have enough food at home for about a week." Indeed, they were not the type to stockpile, always preferring to buy as needed. Even if they had experienced hunger during the initial lockdown of the pandemic, they hadn't changed their ways. The family ate breakfast with heavy hearts as Mrs. Eliza received a message from a colleague at the hospital. The hospital was completely overrun, and they couldn't return. The outbreak had spread worldwide, and it was crucial to stock up on supplies early, as rescue operations would take time. The colleague, an orphan 10 years younger than Mrs. Eliza, often visited her home for meals, and the family treated her like a little sister. Just yesterday, Mrs. Eliza had invited her over for dinner today, and the young girl had happily agreed. After one night, the young girl told her, "Sis, I can't get out. Take care of yourselves." Mrs. Eliza was on the verge of tears. After finishing breakfast, she discussed with Gabriel the need to stock up on supplies. Although the property management had sent a message, there was no action, and they knew they had to rely on themselves, as they discussed distracting the creature with noise. The elderly lady spoke up. "I'll draw it away. George is still young, and I've lived a long life. Even if I turn into one of those things, I won't be fast and pose no threat to you." "Mom, enough. No more words." The elderly lady was a good mother and a wonderful mother-in-law, treating her daughter-in-law as her own. She never interfered in the couple's affairs or took sides, even during their fiercest arguments. She would simply cook a meal and say, "Let's eat," then talk. Having her around was truly a blessing for them. Suddenly, George chimed in, "Dad, I just remembered, didn't we buy a drone last year?" George had done exceptionally well in his elementary school final exams, and as a reward, Gabriel had bought him a drone. "Yes, that's right. Unfortunately, the drone was broken," but George confidently assured, patting his chest, that he could fix it in one day. Gabriel and Mrs. Eliza decided to use this time to study the behavior of the zombies. On the first day of observation, they noticed that the zombies seemed slower at sunrise. By evening, George had repaired the drone, and they decided to observe once more. The next day, they found that the zombies were also slower at midnight. Having identified these patterns in zombie activity, the couple decided to leave in the morning. Their car was parked inside the complex, which would be considerably safer once they reached it. The elderly lady prepared a list to ensure they didn't grab things haphazardly in a panic. Gabriel thought for a moment and added solar panels to the list, just in case there was a power outage. The family planned to use the drone from the 13th floor to emit a false signal, misdirecting any potential looters to the wrong floor. The next morning, as the couple prepared to leave, Mrs. Eliza kissed her son George on the forehead. "George, if your dad and I don't come back, you and Grandma must take care of each other. Don't talk nonsense. You both will come back." Following their planned method, they discovered that the zombies outside were terrifyingly numerous, but fortunately, their complex was on the outskirts and not heavily afflicted. Gabriel, a gym coach, and Mrs. Eliza, trained in Sanzho, managed to return safely. Their SUV was packed with cans and instant food. On their way back, They discussed making another trip to stock up as they anticipated an increase in zombie numbers. Once they delivered the supplies, the elderly lady and George refused to let them leave again. Gabriel reassured his mother, "Mom, you've always taught me to stand tall and proud. Now, standing tall and proud means protecting you and George. George, be brave, you're a boy." Their subsequent trip was challenging, as Gabriel was fetching water. A zombie unexpectedly appeared, but Mrs. Eliza quickly intervened and killed it with one blow. This time, they found a large truck loaded with goods. The keys were still in the ignition, though the driver was nowhere to be seen. Gabriel, having a commercial driving license, hurriedly transferred their supplies into the truck. On their way back, they passed a pharmacy. Mrs. Eliza immediately stopped the car, and Gabriel, understanding her intent, also pulled over. The pharmacy door was open, suggesting the pharmacist might have turned into a zombie and fled elsewhere. Mrs. Eliza didn't bother to check what the medications were. She just grabbed them and stuffed them into her bag. She also found some discontinued fever reducers and antibiotics under the counter, nearly clearing out the pharmacy. When the two returned home, the elderly lady had already prepared dinner. Mrs. Eliza noticed that her mother seemed to have been crying. "Mom, we're back safe and sound, but we need to go out again tonight." Their home didn't require any additional securing. When it was renovated, considering there were elderly and children, they had installed the best quality window frames available. Although the glass wasn't one way, the blackout curtains were very thick. That night, they headed straight for the Metro wholesale store. There were more zombies there than they had anticipated. Deciding against splitting up, they knew they had to return together as they had come. Gabriel had brought a spare phone. They parked the car a distance away and set a phone alarm for 15 minutes later before quickly returning to finish off the remaining zombies. They hurriedly loaded their supplies into the truck. Mrs. Eliza, who also had a truck driving license, had acquired it impulsively years ago while accompanying Gabriel, though she had never driven since. Despite saying this, Mrs. Eliza was completely fearless. "Don't worry, trust me, this time." They transported materials back home in 2 truckloads, and did the same with another 2 trucks on a subsequent trip. Finally, having no shortage of supplies, they returned in their own SUV. Mrs. Eliza also picked up a lot of fruits and, upon passing a seed store and finding it deserted with no signs of zombies, she grabbed dozens of seed packets. There was plenty of soil at home. Worst comes to worst, they could just pull out some flowers. Upon their return, they decided not to venture out anymore and to wait for rescue. Mrs. Eliza had thoughtfully left some food in the apartments on the 13th and 14th floors, making them look ransacked, before returning to the 17th floor. Thus, they lived on securely. Mr. Gavin set up a duty roster. The elderly lady was excused due to her age, and young George was assigned just 4 hours a day. The rest rotated in 10-hour shifts, though it was tiring, even when there was talk of a safe haven. They chose not to go. With their ample supplies, elderly and children to consider, it was better not to take any risks. It was best for the family to stay safe. When most of the neighborhood had cleared out, Gabriel noticed Zoe's family. They were very cautious and careful. If Gabriel hadn't remembered seeing that family stock up on food in their building just a few days before the zombie outbreak and kept watching that building, he might never have noticed them. Gabriel discussed the situation with Zoe's family, and ultimately it was the elderly lady who suggested, "Ask if they want to form an alliance and share the watch duties. It's too exhausting for you two alone, and they can't manage by themselves. We're very secure." How fortunate they were to have met Zoe's family in these apocalyptic times. In the depths of winter, the elderly lady was so cold she couldn't sleep at night, and Zoe's family brought them warm packs. In the unbearable heat of summer, they brought over mung bean soup. Such simple gestures, trivial before the apocalypse, became precious treasures during it. How fortunate to have others to share the burdens of this apocalyptic world, ensuring they were no longer an isolated island. When the calamity finally ended, Zoe's family invited them to dine together. During the meal, both families spontaneously burst into tears. They always thought having enough food and drink was enough during the apocalypse, but the experiences and sights etched deep into their bones would haunt them. Often, in the quiet of the night, they felt the echoes of screams, startling them awake to stand by the window until dawn. The catastrophe was over, but the memories would never be forgotten. Both families participated in the post-apocalyptic rebuilding. Mrs. Eliza became even busier. Gabriel often returned home late at night, always waiting downstairs for Miss Eliza to come home. The nightmarish events were behind them, but the scars they left were too deep to heal quickly. George went back to school, where there were significantly fewer students. One grade couldn't even fill a single class, and the sight brought the homeroom teacher to tears. These students truly represented hope. Though few in number, at least knowledge would be passed down, humanity would advance, and with hope in their hearts, life would always find a way.